You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. And as this is our February episode, we thought we would try to do something romantic.
It is gothic romantic.
Yes. So we landed on Dragonwyck, which is actually a personal favorite of mine. I watched it ages ago when I was young, and TCM, or I think actually it might have been when AMC was actually playing classic movies, like way back then, and always loved it. Didn't fully understand it as much as I've done in rewatching it older, but still loved it. And the first thing you have to address about Dragonwyck, in my opinion, is gothic romance or gothic horror romance.
Perhaps it can be considered in both camps.
I think of it as a gothic thriller romance. It may not be like horror, but it's very like thriller, dark intentions kind of stuff. And there is a ghostly element. So
there are two distinct moments of that that we'll cover later.
So yeah, interestingly, so like I kind of was more on it's just a gothic romance side, but listening to like professionals, commentaries and stuff on the DVD, they pointed out that technically it is also a gothic horror because it has a malevolent supernatural element that is not explained away. So that puts it canon-wise in the horror camp as well. So there's the professional answer. I still feel it's more gothic romancy, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, but officially it's a horror as well. So there we go.
I would say I agree that it has just enough to categorize it that they can say it, but it's not a major component. It's not like the driving plot point.
This is no Crimson Peak, but
thank goodness, honest.
I liked Crimson Peak, if only for the eye candy.
Just like I was not ready for some of that.
Oh yeah,
that's fine.
Oh, it was. It definitely was. But anyway, we're talking about Dragonwyck.
I apologize.
Dragonwyck.
Well, so just the little gist of it, in case you've never seen it, Dragonwyck is set in 1844 in New York, the upper Hudson area, basically. And Vincent Price, Rebecca, you have to say this. What is this for Vincent Price? It's his first.
I can't remember if this quote applies to this movie or one of his other ones, because I'd have to check the chronological, like the timeline of it. But I think at one point he had referred to this as one of the first of his Dead Wives movies.
Yes.
Because he did this. There was a couple of the Poe ones. I can't remember.
All the Poes are after this, so yeah.
Yeah, I know those are after it, but I can't remember if it's Tomb of Legia or Fall of the House of Usher. But
it might be Hush, but you guys can look it up. That's what Google's for, and we like for you guys to be interactive. So if you want to come and tell us which one came after that, we'd appreciate it. But yes, correct. I had Rebecca mention that because Rebecca's brought it up repeatedly. He called this the first of the Dead Wives movie. So.
Yeah, because he had a bunch of them.
Yeah, and this literally was his first. He's quoted as saying that, as she mentioned, it's even brought up on the documentary, or at least in the commentary on the DVD, that he had mentioned that. Now, I also would posit that it's sort of his first Poe movie too, or at least precursor to Poe. And a little background in that is that, so the character that Vincent Price plays is not a good person, but it's a slow build up to how not a good person he is. Mm-hmm. And although Vincent Price played some horror characters in Universal, like Invisible Man, the fourth one, and stuff like that, he really didn't play something this ick, for lack of a better term.
Menacing.
Yeah. Until really now, and he hadn't played a Poe character yet either. So, but Anya Seton, who wrote this book, she was basing the mentality of Nicholas Van Ryn, the main character, off of Edgar Allan Poe's poem Alone, which Rebecca, you said you had come in contact before, but I actually
Yeah.
had no recollection of this poem, and I have to say it's now my favorite poem. So you guys need to look
I
up
had come
this
across
poem and
it
read it.
I'd come across it in like one of the Poe collections I'd read at some point, that I've owned off and on, as you go through your book acquisition cycles and book purging cycles.
At some point, if I'm bored, I may read it aloud and post it on our social media just as a little
Ooh,
aside, because
please
it'll be
do.
just a shorty. This is the little guy. So honestly, I have time tomorrow, so I may just do that because it's going to be fun.
I think that's going to be a great
really liked it.
addition.
I was going to say, I read it aloud to Jenny.
Yeah.
That's not
We
to
both
finish
were like, really? Okay, so this is all the odd people's poem. If you were the odd person out, the weird girl, the weird boy, the smelly kid in the corner, whatever, Alone should
It
appeal
really
to you.
does. It really does, like, just strike a chord if you've ever been like the odd person out. Like, it's lovely and dark, and like you felt that way before in your life. Like, but yeah, very good poem. So look out for
Is
that.
it?
I will do that and upload it as a
I
precursor.
I think that if she's taking inspiration from that poem, you can really feel it in the whole movie.
Mhm.
Yeah. It really comes out later in the tower room scene, but I'm
Yes.
sorry, we've jumped all over the place yet again because it's a very exciting movie. We got a lot to cover, but basic
Yeah,
premise,
we're all
you have
very excited.
Nicholas Van Ryan, the sort of like elitist, noble type person of the time who has distant relations, like his grandmother was the same grandmother to this poor country family, and well, not poor, but this farmer family in Connecticut, different grandfathers, but same grandmother, and he writes to them saying, one of your daughters could be a companion for my daughter. And, and of course, it's a very elitist letter. It basically says,
Oh, yes.
you can offer stuff you can't possibly, which is obviously true, but did you need to be a dick about it?
Wow, guy.
Which it's true, but condescending.
Yeah, like it already sets the tone that this guy clearly believes he's above all others because of his wealth and his station, which is not unique. Pretty much, even nowadays, people with money and want to try to tie themselves back to like pedigree like a dog. They think they're really great, and we're like, okay, we call that incest where I'm from, but all right, sorry.
I mean,
but I digress.
Where's the lie, though?
Yeah, where's the untruth in that? There is none.
But yeah, so he writes, and of course we have the character of Miranda Wells, which is played amazingly by Jean Tierney. And
oh wow,
she is the flighty child, head in the clouds, reads the gothic romances, wants, the Ariel singing about I want to be where the people are, basically,
and displaying that same naivety and I admit that at one point, like her father says, you don't have a lick of common sense. I agree with her father. She doesn't. Not really through fault of her own, but because she's sheltered and in the environment that she's in.
I mean, I would say she probably has a lot of common sense that just wouldn't come to that field, like with like men.
Agree. As it relates to the romance experience, maybe is a good way to phrase it.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
fully agree.
Yeah, she has this wonderful grand idea that she's probably gotten from books and from listening to people talk, and it is none of it real world experience or anything that anyone could be like, yes, this, you've had experience with it. No, she is not.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So the movie, Jean Tierney is the top billed for this movie. It's, on the marquee, it was Jean Tierney, Walter Huston, who played her father, Ephraim Wells, and then Vincent Price. He's the third build on it, which is, but really anybody who watches the movie or anybody who refers to the movie, you refer to it as a Vincent Price movie because he took it over.
He did.
He swanned in all majestic, like with a cravat and just.
Yeah.
From my understanding, he really had to fight casting to get the role because they had seen him in Laura and were like, he's a light playboy. Can he really do this role?
Yeah. Well, and his past, he's never been top billed up to this point, really. He was never really the top billed actor. And yeah, so they kind of took a gamble on it. And originally Gregory Peck was set to play Nicholas Van Ryn. But this is interesting. So Lubitsch, who was a producer who had his name removed because of a conflict later, but he was going to direct it originally. And that's what had Gregory Peck on board, because Gregory Peck was the big name at the time. He was the big romantic lead character type. And Lubitsch, I believe he had a stroke or a heart attack or something like that. And he didn't recover enough to be able to handle the directing of it. So that's when Joseph Mankiewicz got it. And this was just Mankiewicz's first, it was his directorial debut. Now, he'd been a writer for ever, almost like since his 20s. And he has tons of writing credits, and including this film, Dragonwyck. He was also the screenwriter for it. But this was his first first attempt at directing. That's what I'm trying to get out. And then he directed 22 films after that, including like The Ghost of Mrs. Muir and The Ghost of Mrs. Muir and A Letter to Three Wives and Cleopatra. And his last one was The Movie Sleuth in like 1972. So, and I would say for a directorial debut, it's masterful.
He hit the ball out of the park first, on the first shot, I think, with this one.
Yeah, truly.
But interesting, him and Lubitsch, where he had like idolized Lubitsch, he was really excited to be working under him and all that. They just started conflicting, and like Lubitsch was like over his shoulder the whole time as he was directing. They finally had Mankiewicz was like, "You need to go," and basically barred him from there. And that and a few other things that Lubitsch was upset about made him say, "I don't even want my name on there as a producer. Don't put it there." So it's kind of sad, but an excellent movie. But again, so back to the story, Miranda comes running in. She's got a letter from Nicholas Van Ryn, as we noted, saying that, hey, I can have one of your daughters. Miranda's already decided she's going to be one of the daughters that goes. There's her and her sister, Tibby. Her mom, played by Anne Revere, who just amazing job. And the dynamic between her and Walter Houston, where he plays the husband Ephraim, I love the dynamic. It's real interesting.
Their dynamic was amazing. They made her look so plain. And I'm like, I'm sure that's a beautiful woman. They really worked hard to make her look like a plain country woman. And I thought it was kind of funny because it's like, she's quite pretty.
You can still see.
Yeah, I'm like, she's quite pretty. They've worked very hard to do this. But yeah, love the parents, love the dynamic between the parents.
Because you had Ephraim was like this seemingly overbearing fire and brimstone guy, but he constantly was sort of deferring to his wife Abby. Like even when he went to go to his bedroom, he's like, "Abby, you coming with me? Abby, what do you think?"
It was clear that he viewed himself, of course, that he was the final authority, but he still seemed to want her input and whatnot.
It was clear that she was valued, would you say?
Yes. And I think that's what I was trying to work my way around to.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Sometimes words are hard. Hi, Bob.
But yeah, so I mean, it's really an interesting dynamic, and it's funny too because he's obviously a fundamentalist and traditionalist. Like he even says to Miranda at one point that you're 18 and you're over 18 and relatively pretty, you ought to be married by now. When she's talking about wanting to go to Dragonwyck. So of course there's a debate over if father's first answer is no, it's not going to happen. And it's funny, there's an earlier bit where like Anne Revere says that that Ephraim and God basically are one, not like equated to one, but if God's will and his will seem to be aligned quite often, let's put it that way. And so Miranda just says that she believes that this letter was a sign, and she really feels it in her heart that it's a sign from God. And, first Ephraim questions this. He's like, "Are you telling the truth? Or are you
if he's like, are you sure?
Oh. Are you just playing with me?" And they do this Bible flip thing. And basically she picks a passage and says something about sending, I forgot the name of the biblical character, into the wilderness with like bread and water, which didn't sound like a very good thing, but it did indicate travel.
Yeah, it was like, so he sent his daughter, into the woods of I can't remember where, and I'm like, I don't remember this, but man, you're lucky that it was him packing his daughter off somewhere. Of course she knew. She flipped to the right page.
She was practicing. She marked it. But it works out. She gets to go to Dragonwyck, and you have this lovely scene when they go to the hotel to meet Nicholas Van Ryan.
To the Astor Hotel.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, could they use this to illustrate the country cousins coming to the city more?
Yeah, which is a weird interplay between Ephraim and the I don't know.
Concierge. Yeah, like
There you go. There's the word, because he didn't like being called an innkeeper, which was weird. Like, this is not an inn. I'm not a
tavern
keeper.
Yeah.
Well, he called him a tavern keeper. And
Sorry.
I think to him, like, a tavern keeper means I'm a barkeep. I am not a barkeep. This is a hotel. Are you serious? He's like,
But he was so polite to Ephraim, though. He calls him my good man, and Ephraim's like, I'm not your good man. It's like, damn, Ephraim.
It's like, geez, calm down. Take some politeness. Yeah,
I think it's to show us that Ephraim is like that, like fire and brimstone kind of guy, to be like, I don't trust you city folks, even the ones who are trying to do something nice for me.
Yes, he's. Yeah, I think it was trying to illustrate the I am a plain speech person.
Yeah, or definitely set up his temperament where he might have a slight inferiority complex, perhaps, which I think comes into play later.
Yeah,
You know?
but because even though, I mean, we've all been in these situations, even though you tell yourself, I'm not going
Just
to
as
feel,
good.
you always, there's this tiny little bit in the back of your mind that picks on something, the color of your dress, your shoes, and so and then, you get cranky in response.
Yeah. You get defensive, you feel like you don't fit in, you feel like everybody knows you don't fit in and everybody's eyeing you. So yes, absolutely, you get defensive. Yeah. So yeah, they go up, there's this lovely room that, once they state that they're there to meet Nicholas Van Ryan, the concierge just takes on this even more polite, like just
obsequious,
kind of sycophant demeanor, where he's like, yeah, oh my goodness, I should have recognized you, just craziness. Like, why would you?
Yeah, exactly.
Takes her to this lovely room. Some, bellhops or wait staff bring in this, what clearly is meant to be a lavish meal. And then, of course, Ephraim is even more offended. Like, why would you order food where you're not even going to be? And just, how do you know what I want? Poor Miranda's like, but there's anything you could possibly want. And he's like, no man should ever need to have everything that he'd ever want.
Of course. And when I heard that line, I'm like, I kind of can follow that along. Why he would say that. It's similar to the line of someone who wants to be in power, not necessarily should be the one in power because they want it too badly.
Yeah, or just because why would you need more than what you need? Like, you shouldn't have everything that you want. You only need what you need,
Yeah. I
mean, it's a very humble sort of, fundamentalist Christian concept. There's nothing wrong with it, but it just, the whole thing,
everything in moderation,
really sets Ephraim up to be seeming like there's nothing that's going to make this man happy. Like, no matter what was going to happen in the scene, he was going to have some issue with it, is what it seemed like to me.
He's a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
And
then, of course, sorry.
He's also just already judged this situation as being something that is not great. Like, he doesn't trust this guy at all, and he doesn't trust anything associated with him. So he doesn't trust his food. He doesn't trust his judgment. He doesn't really want to send his daughter with him, but he's not really being given a choice. So here's where we are. And then the guy hasn't even shown up.
Not even there, sending food. So, of course, he takes his daughter and they sit and to read a passage from the Bible. And you actually get a tender moment because, like, Ephraim says to her, he's like, look, you don't have to put up with me for much longer. And Miranda's like, it's not, I want to not put up with you. And so they just, and I think him reading with her in the Bible is his way of just trying to be in touch with his daughter and protective of her. It's kind of sweet, but also kind of funny because then you have like this stubbornness standoff that sort of happens because Ephraim and Miranda start reading. And of course, there's a knock at the door. It's Nicholas Van Ryan who's showing up, and they don't stop reading, or Ephraim doesn't stop reading. He continues to read. He's going to finish this passage. People knocking at the door be damned, Meanwhile, you can just feel from the other end of the door, the impatience of the knock feels like it's getting more. And then Nicholas Van Ryan just opens the door, and you can see the irritation on his face, but you can see that he moderates it as they're reading it. And you can also see his appreciation of Miranda's looks.
Yes.
And you see that reciprocated because you see her looking at him rather fascinatedly as well. And how could you not?
Agree, because this is probably the first time she's been out of her tiny little town. And now here she is in these luxurious settings, and in walks Vincent Price. Well, somebody who looks as good as Vincent Price does in this film. I defy anyone who is interested in men to not take a moment of appreciation and, oh my.
Yeah, it's a very stunning figure. I mean, he's gorgeous. His posture's perfect. A little thin, but we'll get to that later. But it just debonair, just has this aura of charisma, and
and the cravat and the frock coat, and just
it's nice. It's a lovely view. Yep. So
good. This hair is super thick, and you just kind of want to run your hands through it. It's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine.
Do you need a moment, Betsy?
We're good. We're
so
good. So
now we get introduced to Nicholas Van Ryn, and also I'd like to say that we start seeing, right away they do give you a hint of red flags. They don't make it like bloop bloop bloop, like look, he's evil. You don't get that right away. You get enough of a hint that you need to keep an eye on this situation, especially if you've had romantic experience. You can,
I was going to say, those of us who have had the life experience, and certainly we three all have, we can see those flags. You hear a line, you see a flash of expression, you're like, and something goes off in your own head, and you're like, exactly what you said. I got to keep an eye on this.
Mm-hmm. And basically where it comes out initially is with the little interplay between Ephraim and Nicholas Van Wells when they're talking about, farming, not, and him being a patroon. And the farmer is working his land for him, which he allows them to do. Like even the wording of it, I allow them to work my land for me,
and pay rent.
Yeah. Little background: the patroonship basically came out from the Dutch India Company back in the 1600s, and what they did at the time is they gave these huge grants of land to people who came over, and it was the patroonship. And what they had to do in return, the patroons had to get like 50 settlers there within, I think, like a year or something like that, to work the lands. And what happened, it was still their land. It was a tenant farmer situation where the farmers would work. They wouldn't have to pay taxes for the first 10 years because they were paying rent to the patroons. So it wasn't like it's like saying you don't have to pay property tax when you rent a house because you're paying rent. That's kind of included, but anyway, and they also were their own system of government. At that time, they could own slaves. They have slave labor in that area. It was very feudal, very shitty.
That was my impression.
And it actually, in the movie, it kind of gives you the timeline. Like, so around 1844 is when they started having the anti-rent wars. And then a couple of years later is when the governor was like, yeah, no more of that shit. You can't, these people are working and they're paying for it. You can't keep doing this. You have to allow them the right to buy the land, and that ended it. And so that it was no more. I don't know when they stopped allowing slavery, or if they ever did, or if it just ended with a patroonship and it ended with the Civil War allowing Union slaves in the North. I assume it ended with a patroonship, possibly prior to that.
Probably. I don't remember, unfortunately.
I can say that almost all the patroons did fight in the Revolution, where they were on the side of the Americans. But keep in mind, these were Dutch settlers, so they didn't want to be, attached to the crown in England. So they fought with the American revolutionaries. So
yeah, I thought it was really interesting to bring in actual historic background for the film.
Yeah, well, that was Anya Seton in her book. Yeah. She actually read it in the papers of the time, or read an article about it, thought it was interesting, and that's why she put it in her story. Which, a quick side note, so Anya Seton was a pretty prolific writer, and she wrote a lot of gothic romance type stuff. And this initially was published as a serial story in the Ladies' Home Journal before it got put into a novel form.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a soap opera.
That was pretty common at the time, though. A lot of writers had their stuff done as serials and not.
Yeah, like I think even some of them, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's books were like that too. Like serial.
Well, Dickens was a serial writer.
Yeah,
absolutely. Stuff was, and it's condensed. So
now basically, yeah. So what happens is like, Ephraim, who is a farmer who owns his own land, is farming for himself and his own profit. Was talking to Nicholas Van Ryn, who mentions, like I said, rather haughtily, that it's his land and he allows people to farm it for him and pay them rent. And you can just, Ephraim, of course, takes offense to this and is like, I would rather be farming a piece of land that is nothing but rocks and crap, basically, than have to be farming a land for somebody else, like the richest farmland ever, even if it meant that I couldn't own it. And but just the look on Vincent Price's face as Nicholas Van Ryn of like the audacity, like right there is red flag number one. You're like,
yeah, that look was very much like, how dare you speak to me that way?
Yeah, like, you are a peasant. You shouldn't have your own land, is kind of what it looks like. And then oddly, it just waylays into Miranda interrupting because she's hearing music out on the patio, and she asks Nicholas if that's the new waltz, which was supposed to be a scandalous dance at the time because you held each other close as you waltzed, so it was still kind of scandalous, and people were like waltzing. And she'd asked him if he waltzed, and Nicholas, of course, answers, of course I waltzed, but never in public.
Never in public.
Which also seems like he's chastising her. So to me, that was like red flag number 2.
Yeah.
But of course, this endears him to Ephraim because Ephraim's like, oh, he has sense. He wouldn't dance in a waltz in public. That makes him a little more moral in my brain.
Yeah. The line, I do like the line. It says, we may not agree on politics, but I like your manners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and also this time, Ephraim was feeling very insecure because Nicholas Van Ryn is much younger than he thought. So, and that's mentioned repeatedly, and
mm-hmm.
And Nicholas actually takes a little bit of offense to it, but this little securing of we wouldn't have a public waltz makes Ephraim feel more secure. It makes him think that his daughter's a little safer. Interestingly enough,
no, she's not.
I thought, like when I was watching it, that he was playing that up for the father specifically. Like, he wasn't trying to chastise her. He was trying to win the father over because he had just made a mistake with the whole farming thing. Obviously, they weren't going to agree on that. So when she said something about like the waltzing, he was like, oh, well, never in public, because he knew that the father would really like that he said that, so that the father would be like, this is a man of morals. He's won me back a little bit. That's what I thought it was, because then when he talks to her later,
you might be right, but the class difference, like the whole character of Nicholas is like, I don't think he felt like he needed to win the father over, and I really thought he just was like offended at the thought of dancing in public, because why would he dance with a bunch of peasants?
Oh, no,
I took it as I took it as along with the why would I dance in public with everybody else? I have elite private events.
I read it differently because I honestly thought he was being super skeezy and just trying to win over her father, because he had already decided that he liked her, and if he could get rid of his wife, that was his next wife, and he did need to make her father's acquaintance because it was not going to happen otherwise.
Well, I think there's no reason it can't be both.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not going to say you're wrong. My take on it, I mean, obviously, there's no right or wrong. This is an interpretation.
I mean, that's what I took it as, because I was like, that the minute he saw her, he was like, that's mine.
Oh, he thought she was gorgeous. I don't know that he made up his mind that he would have her until the boat, in my opinion. But I do think he started thinking at least about having her, if not necessarily having her as a wife.
Right.
By then. But also, like I said, character-wise, for me, it's just, like I said, he's so haughty and arrogant that I don't think he felt that he needed. Like, even if you think about later on when he's asking permission for marrying her, he's really not asking, he's telling.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
to me, it's like, I don't think he cared if he was going to win this guy over or not. He's so arrogant. He was going to have his way. He thought no matter what. But that, again, is just a difference of opinion. So I guess I don't need to keep going on it. I apologize, Betsy. But what I do think is, yes, he's scheming to get Miranda on his side, though. And I think what he does afterwards, because he realizes that he hurt her feelings when he says, I would never dance publicly. After Ephraim leaves the room, he does go to her and say, I do dance the waltz at balls and such, like as a soothing balm.
Yeah. Oh, that was
saying balls and such. He says, I do dance the waltz in private. Yeah. Which is why I think that he had already decided that he wanted to be with her, and that he was like, because I was like, he said in private, not in a ball, not in my home.
Well, It
In
would
private.
assume that in private would be at a private ball or a private dance. I mean, he wouldn't just be dancing a waltz around his living room. That's not who he
Yeah,
is.
I took that when he comes back, when he sort of, as he's leaving the room, and by the by, in that's some of the beginning of his first manipulation hooks that he's placing.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I also think it's funny, like up to this point, they keep referring to each other as cousins. So they're still saying cousin Miranda, cousin Nicholas, cousin Miranda, and the changeover on that gets interesting to me. So cut scene, we're now on a little tugboat going down the Hudson River to get to Dragonwyck, and you see Miranda just excitedly running towards it because she hears somebody say something about, you can see Dragonwyck. So she's like pushing her way through the crowd, grabbing some, telescope's not the right word. The thing that comes out the pirates use.
Spyglass.
Spyglass. There we go. Thank you.
I was like, it's right there.
Like, the pirates use it. I'm losing my mind. I'm old. Forgive me, people. So she sees Dragonwyck. She's a transpite. It's this gorgeous Gothic looking mansion that, all of us would drool over to some degree. And she starts running back to Nicholas. Her bonnet falls off her head. This is also actually very bad. You don't have your hair uncovered in public if you're wrong. And she runs in, and like Nicholas's first words to her about that is like, what has happened to your bonnet? And she doesn't even answer right away because she's just so excited about it.
She's distracted. Her mind is elsewhere.
But also this is where it drives home the point that he's not looking at her as a distant relative because she mentions about leaving her bonnet off a little bit longer because she wants to feel the breeze on her face. And, she's also asked him stuff like, how many rooms does Dragonwyck have? How many servants you have? And of course, Nicholas is like, I've never counted the rooms, never counted the servants. She's like, aren't you thrilled at seeing it? And he's like, why would I be thrilled at anything that has to be shared with others? So you get another bit of red flag there.
Yep.
I'm so elitist that nothing can be wonderful unless it's just mine. If I have to share it with someone, then it sucks.
Control issues. He's got them.
And also we started seeing a little bit of grooming, in my opinion, as well, because she mentions that she said beautiful so often that she doesn't know what other words to say. And he's like, well, there's another word you say, but I prefer beautiful. And she's like, what? And she likes to say golly Moses a lot, and he doesn't like golly. So she starts correcting her behavior then and there. Interestingly. But he also starts flirting with her, in my opinion, here too. Like something about like the breeze must indeed feel lovely against such a beautiful face, I think is along the lines of what he says. And she of course merely lowers her eyes.
It's fine.
Yeah.
The role the man is slightly more palatable because he is Vincent Price,
and because we know it's fake.
Right. Because
however,
so then we finally get to Dragonwyck, and we get introduced to one of my favorite characters, Magda, who she casts epic levels of shade. I mean, she almost is to the level of my grandmother. And if anybody has never met my grandmother, yes.
You should explain ethnic regional backgrounds of your family so they would understand why.
Oh, well, grandma's Slovak and Lithuanian, and she's 93 and still takes down everybody in the family. Any of us who had any military experience and went through like basic training of any type, we all ended up accidentally laughing at our drill sergeants or drill instructors, depending on what branch you went through, because as we would say to them, your grandmother could do much better than that. And it really wasn't an insult because our grandmother's epic levels of shade. So
it's
we had a lot of work to do, drill sergeant, because
it's like, I'm not trying to insult you. I just need you to understand the level of background from where I came.
Bars up here, man. Bars up.
Master level. She topped out.
So Magda is very restrained at first. So we'll get to her because we're going to meet Johanna, who is just actually biggest victims in this movie, in my opinion. So she's Vincent Price's wife. She's played by Vivian Osborne, and who was a very prolific actor in the time, but this was her last movie. I don't remember reading why, but she just faded and didn't do any more after this. But you come across Vivian and Joanna, and she's slurping down food with a passion.
Yes.
She's very excited about her food. And I find this interesting because she's
Pardon me.
chubby, but she doesn't look grotesquely fat or anything. You know what
No.
I mean?
Mm-mm.
She just looks,
Robust.
yeah.
Stout. Stout, maybe.
Yeah, but you can tell there's something off by the way she's devouring her food.
Yes.
And this comes up later again. And I think this is really interesting. But, she sees that, Nicholas and Miranda come in and she's like suddenly like embarrassed. I don't know if it's because of the way she was like, I knew you were here. I would have waited,
Yeah.
And Nicholas is not mean to her really at this point, but he's cold. Like really cold.
Yes.
He's like, well, of course we are here, dear, And then he's somewhat indulgent of her, like it switches off. And like, again, to me, this is red flags because this is the behavior where you're like, well, you could tell that's unstable. And Johanna's reactions give you the impression that she's not sure what's coming next at her,
Yes. The impression I got off of that is you're walking on eggshells because you don't know what the next thing you say is going to set them off and you're going to catch hell for it. And it could be something, and it's the modern day equivalent of, oh shit, I better not set this pop can down on the radio and walk away because I'm going to get yelled at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. But then she also is brave. She's like, she's like, did you bring the pastries, Nicholas? Like the biggest treat in the world for her. I feel for Johanna in that moment because good pastries are hard to find.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I feel you. I identify with you right there because pastry.
Those pastries sounded lovely to me too, but and this is the point where Nicholas is very indulgent when she's like, did you bring the pastries? She's like, yes, dear. So I brought him, like, very somewhat patronizing, but also very like, of course, playing along with her, soothing sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have this thing, and then you get to introduce to Katrin, which is the whole reason Miranda is being brought here is for this little girl who, that poor little baby. I mean, you can tell she really feels the poem alone as well because she's clearly a bird out of water or fish out of water, or bird in the sea. She's just no idea what she's doing. She's in this dining room. You can tell she feels awkward. She doesn't know how she's supposed to behave. Her mom,
she doesn't want to be there.
Chastises her for, I don't know what, really. Like, where have you been? Like, where do you think she's been? Where have you told her to go?
She's been in the nursery. Children were supposed to be seen and not heard during this time. And for the upper classes, you farmed your kids out on the governess.
Yeah.
And then maybe you saw them like for a couple minutes in the morning and a couple minutes at night. And that's about it. So, yeah.
And the look on Nicholas's face where he just looks irritated by her mere existence, which kind of gets explained a little later. But, but Miranda, of course, is very sweet to her. And Katrin has no idea what to do.
Yeah.
She's very reserved. Like, she's not trusting of the niceness. Can't imagine why.
No.
Really?
Yeah, but she's played by Connie Marshall, and Connie Marshall was a very prolific child actress. She was in tons and tons of films, but then she contracted polio. She lived, but became disabled, and so that pretty much knocked her out of the film industry at the time. I believe she lived like a full life outside of that. Like she got married, she had kids, but that pretty much ended her film career, sadly. Which is vaccines, people, comes up another time if we talk about Gene Tierney a little bit. But anyway, so there's Katrin, there's dinner. Then we have this interesting scene, which actually is when we start learning how freaking amazing Magda is about throwing shade. But but we have they're in a salon, I guess maybe you call it.
Well, they're in what I thought was
room, conservatory.
Oh, that happened. Yeah, you're right.
With the harpsichord
for that bedroom.
Yeah,
shade. Yeah. There's so much shade. I get confused.
A salon, yeah, probably like a salon or a music room.
Yeah. So Vincent Price is sitting there playing the harpsichord. There's this picture, which is interesting at first because you see this picture of this woman standing there, and the way she's standing, you have Miranda standing by the harpsichord, and she's basically standing in the same posture, which to me is foreshadowing. Like they're like, hint, what's coming her way. She asked about it. The woman's name is Azil. She was a great grandmother, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Of Vincent Price, or of Nicholas Van Ryn, not of actual Vincent Price. That was brought up from New Orleans when she was clearly about as young as Miranda. And you have Johanna, who's kind of enjoying herself telling this little story.
Yeah.
She's not really telling much. She's just like, oh, the servants are afraid of the harpsichord, and to hear them tell it that, Ezekiel still plays the harpsichord, and you get Vincent Price being a dick again. He's like, we don't listen to the servants. Why would we even talk about that? Like just chastising her left and right,
And you can see like the shift on her face too. Like right after that, she knows, oh shit, I fucked up.
Right. And keep in mind that Nicholas has probably been away for about a month at this time. So she's been in this house alone with her servants and her daughter that she doesn't interact with. And, here's her husband. And this is what really is kind of sweet and sad. So, she's up and she apologizes to Nicholas. And then she's like, maybe time we go to bed, retire. And you can tell she's wants to be alone with her husband. But what she gets instead is her husband saying, oh, well, if you're tired, you can go to bed. I'm going to stay up a little longer. And basically sends her away. And she's in a corner. She's like, she has a choice. She can either say, no, I'm not tired. Sit down and embroider again and look like an idiot, or she can go off into her room. So she chooses to go off into her room. And of course, Nicholas is using this opportunity to move in a little more on Miranda.
Yep. You have the scene where he's playing and she's supposed to be singing, although she really just speaks the lyrics.
Yeah.
I didn't think this was a spoken word.
I wasn't sure what that was supposed to be about. Like, is it that Gene Tierney didn't sing, or?
I don't know. I really don't.
That was my thought, was she must not sing, because he's like, sing it, and then she speaks all the words. So I'm guessing either she's singing it, or the implication is that she didn't know how it went. But I'm like, he's playing it out for you.
Yeah, I had two thoughts. Like, either it was supposed to indicate that she couldn't read music, so she was just speaking along, or I thought maybe there might have been a scene afterwards. Like, maybe the intent was she was supposed to speak it first and then sing it after she got used to it, and they just chose not to do that second part. Maybe
it was kind of an odd little scene. I'm not sure.
It was just strange to me. I just thought it was weird. I'd never seen where they like sing along with me, and the girl just was like, "Let me read it like a poem." I would have to do that too, because my singing has gone to shit because I don't anymore. So it was never good to begin with, but I just thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know if it's maybe supposed to be a talent Miranda didn't have, or if there's some kind of subtext in there that I'm missing because time difference.
It was distinctly odd.
So
it's just a strange little scene. Very strange scene.
But this is also where we see Nicholas drop the cousin moniker. Because she refers to him again as cousin Nicholas, and they've been doing this through dinner through this whole time, and all of a sudden Nicholas comes back with, after they're spending some time alone, with, as we're not really cousins, we should stop calling each other cousins. And then he says goodnight, Miranda, and sends Magda in to take her to bed. Now, at first, Magda just comes across as ghoulish. Like,
I do have one comment.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Like when he is, they're saying, oh, we're not really cousins, we can drop that. It's also psychologically, it's going to remove a barrier from her mind. Although not that it really matters, because back then they had first cousins marrying first cousins, and that's all shades are wrong. But it's going, like I said, it's going to remove that kind of psychological barrier in her mind, whether she has it or not. It's going to make him appear more separate, and thus more acceptable to fall for.
Yeah,
available. Yeah,
completely agree. It was definitely something he did deliberately, manipulatively, to close a gap, shall we say?
Yeah.
But yeah, Magda comes on in to take her to her room, and but first they talk about the room. Does anybody else want to look? All I can think of is Magda's smile as she's telling this scary story. Like, she knows she's just,
my
giving the willies.
Part is that she kept saying, but don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt the expression on her face and the shade. She knows her words are well chosen, and she knows exactly the impact they're going to have.
Yeah, she's making
the story
deliberate
she's
choice.
told before.
Yeah.
She's told this story before. She tells it to everybody who comes into this room. She loves to be kind of ghoulish and tell these people these stories. It's fun for her. I'm sure she did the same thing with Joanna. when she was young and first in the house, she told her those same stories. This is not the first time that she's been like, there's a ghost in this house.
So to sum up,
It's
basically, Isild's marriage to great grandpa Van Ryan was not happy. Basically, they came up from New Orleans. She had a son. They isolated her from her son, drove her nuts, and she killed herself. But before she did, she said that she would, basically would be
A curse
singing
upon your house,
Yeah, be singing as the Van Ryans fell, or any time a tragedy happened to them. So that was that. But of course, as Magda's walking, Miranda up the stairs to her room, she's also explaining that she herself and also Miranda would never hear the harpsichord or the singing. And it's funny because she starts with when, and then she's like, I mean, if. When the tragedy strike. I should say if, because they don't have any Van Ryn blood. So exclusively the only people who can hear the singing and the harpsichord playing, the ghostly singing and harpsichord playing, is when you'd have to be Van Ryn. Blood.
Yeah.
So it'd only be Nicholas and or Catherine that would hear it. But then Magda takes her up to her room, and this is where you get even more shade,
That's like
it's
more
of a direct attack.
Is like, pro level at that point. The gloves are off.
Yeah. So basically, and I don't know if it's because she's being protective of her mistress, because she already sees some shit going on, or if Magda just likes torturing people. Who knows? I mean, or maybe she doesn't like this girl being somewhere in between, like same class as her, but having some step up above her. So she wants to put her in place. It might be that,
It could be all of the above. It could be, there's multiple levels to this.
And some people are just, enjoy fucking with people.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
could be that simple.
But basically Magda just says to her, that she knows she likes having servants to lord over, and she likes having peaches out of season. And so she must like it here. And she wants to feel silk against her young body. But basically in the end, she's going to wish she'd never come to Dragonwyck. Just taking all the fun out of it for her.
She's probably not wrong.
Necessarily wrong. But again, foreshadowing. The next thing though, we actually see Miranda with Catherine, and it's a sweet scene. They're talking and having a good time, and she's teaching her to make her S's. And then you find out how really tragic Catherine's story really is, because she starts talking to Miranda, and she's like, Miranda, my dad's sort of a teacher to you. Now, to me, this is red flags, because what it comes across is Nicholas has been grooming her, grooming Miranda, but of course Miranda just says, yes, he helps me, teaches me the right way to act, kind of stuff, things to say, and I'm like, grooming. But then Katerina asks, she's like, does my dad like me?
I think she asks, like, do my parents love me? Or maybe it is.
She starts with, maybe does my dad
specific.
like me? And I think she moves on, do my parents love me?
Okay.
But I mean, it could be the other way around. Who knows?
She get the general intent.
Yeah, the intent is she wants to know if her parents have any affection for her. And Miranda, of course, you could see her melt, like, of course they do. They love you just like you love them. And then you see Catherine just being blatantly honest. She's like,
I don't love
my parents. I'm just know her parents. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they pretty much popped her out, shoved her in a room, and that was it for her. She's not a son. They don't give a damn.
Yeah. Well, Nicholas certainly doesn't. I mean, Johanna might
but
foster some sentiment, but
yeah, I don't know if Johanna's disregard for her so much because she's a daughter, or if she just really doesn't give a damn because she's miserable and doesn't want to.
Yeah, she may be indifferent, but I think Price's character is actively malevolent.
Hostile.
Yeah. Hostile. Dorda's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
Honestly, I think she's probably lucky that he's neglectful and not just outright abusive.
Yes.
I think you're right. I agree.
I agree as well. So now I can't ever catch the name of the celebration they have for the farmers. Did you guys hear Caramas?
No. I would have to look it up.
But then they said Dutch word. But then afterwards they said Happy 4th of July or Independence Day.
Yeah,
agreed.
So
I thought
the doctor says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was ironic to have this ceremony meant to put their farmers in their place on
Independence Day.
On Independence Day, a holiday
right.
time.
Which is So from the commentary, that's basically was the point that like they have this ceremony for the farmers to pay rent and then have this little party that is at the expense of the patroons, but I never heard what the name was. Like I said, it sounded like Caramas to Catamas. And then
Something like
it just
that.
happened to be because 4th of July was around that time, you know, like it wasn't like they did it as a celebration of Independence Day. It's separate.
More
It just-
coincidental than anything else.
Yeah. And the way it was like phrased, like there's apparently a cut scene and the way that Nicholas phrases it, it's like, well, you know, it's like Independence Day happened because we have this or something like it was, you know, somehow his thing was more important still, you know, but yeah, which is, so I have to, this is going to be somewhat time consuming, but this was one of the things that Lovitch got upset about because there was this scene that happened right around then, like, so when Miranda and Katerina are talking, they're up in the nursery and she talks about the count coming. There's a whole scene where Nicholas is with this count and they're walking through his botanical garden where he has all the plants and the oleander and stuff. And they start talking about, it brings out like how horrible Nicholas is because they talk about how science would be good because, well, he talks about how science would be good because it could get rid of things like deformities and, you know, people you don't want, the, you know, unwanted, disliked people, which could be anything. And the whole point of the scene was this is 1944 when the movie was being made. And
Yep.
so it was really bringing to highlight the Nazis and their beliefs, you know, like they basically eugenics, that you just want to get rid of any race, any disability, any deformity, anything you decided was not correct to have your superior ultimate, you know, whatever the fuck.
I wish they had kept that scene in then because then it explains a little bit more of some of his reactions in the film later.
So
Yeah,
Lovitch loved this scene and he wanted to end, and they decided to cut it because they wanted the slower reveal of the horribleness of Nicholas Van Ryn. They wanted you to discover
I can
along
agree
with
with
Miranda how terrible Nicholas was. But if they had kept this scene, you'd be like, this guy is a fucking monster right there. Like there'd be no justifying after that. So Lovitch, this is one of the places where he like washed his hands. It was like this, and then one other scene that he was like, okay, no, I'm done. You know, I don't want to have my name on this anymore. So I mean, like I'm kind of torn. It would have kind of been a really great scene,
True.
but it does change the tone of the movie when you think of it that way.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that. So I do. I understand both viewpoints.
Yeah,
Of leave it in
I
and leave
could
it
see
out.
either argument, but who's to say? But then, yeah, so we cut ahead and then we're at the whatever celebration. Viewers, if you know what it's called, please contact us and let us know. Clearly, the
trying to
three of us
figure it
like,
out, but
nothing. Yeah.
Betsy, help us.
Yeah. Even when you look up patroonship, you don't find a lot. So I don't know. But
Yeah, I didn't find much.
Basically what's going on here though is it's just a ceremony where the farmers pay their rent, and then there's also like, you know, kind of a carnival that happens too, and the carnival is paid for by the patroon. So it's like, oh, you paid your rent, here's a little party for you, basically based on the money from what you farmed for us. But of the kindness of my heart and from my pocket. And
You're
then
doing such a great job. Here's a pizza party.
Yeah, there you go. Excellent analogy.
It just
and then
popped in my brain.
There's a ball for the upper class around this time too, which, you know, is a celebration of getting the rent, I guess. I don't know. But it happens on 4th of July, so you can call it an independent. But this I also think is interesting too, and kind of creepy when you think about it. So there's a little bit where like Katerina and Miranda are talking about the ball, and Katerina says, you know, you're going to look lovely in the ball dress that my dad bought for you. And this in itself is weird. Like, generally speaking, a woman who's acting as a companion or a governess in the house is not going to get a ball dress bought for her and allowed in the ball at all.
Nope,
This would not happen.
No, she'd be up in the attic with the kid.
Yeah.
If the daughter, if the daughter is going to be allowed to make an appearance, that might be when you would see her, you know, as the supervising adult on the daughter. But agree,
not in a ball gown bought by the patroon. You know? So this in itself, to me, I'm like, this should have been like even Catherine should have been like, this is strange. But they're at the celebration. I'm skipping a part here, very important part, where Dr. Turner is introduced, played by Glenn Langan, who's also extremely hot.
Amen.
I'll try not to digress, but you will see times where I'm talking about Vincent Price and Glenn Langan being in the same
Yeah.
room, standing next to each other, and I get a little overwhelmed. It's a lot of hot.
Jenny needs a private moment.
I just have to calm that down. But so Dr. Turner comes up and he's like asking why, Catherine and Miranda are like hiding in the corner, and they explains. Catherine actually has this scene where she gives this excellent argument about why she should be allowed to go here, and even though she's not allowed to. And the doctor compliments her on her debate skills, which watch the scene because it's an excellent debate, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just very logical, sound argument. It's very good.
Agree.
And you also get a little bit about Miranda's character too, because Miranda just strictly goes, "Oh, but Catherine just insisted on coming. Like she had no curiosity herself. That kids will just have to see things, get what they want." And I love that Catherine just like Catherine
rats
just
her
calls
out.
her out. Rats her out completely. You wanted to come just as much as I did. I'm like,
I love
and
that.
then of course Miranda's slightly embarrassed. I'm like, unless you worked out with the kid in the first place, you can't play that game with children. You better make it clear that they got to have your back. Otherwise, you just say, "Yeah, we just decided we wanted to come see it. We didn't want to be
kids are going to say they got no loyalty. They're going to just unless you bribed them ahead of time, that might work.
You have to work that out before. So anybody who's ever in this situation, just know you need to work that out in advance. But you could already see an instant attraction between Miranda and Dr. Turner. Because you do know this much, Miranda may find Nicholas attractive. You can tell she's not thinking of him as a reality at this point, because she's clearly thinking about Dr. Turner. And obviously, being a good, moral, farm-bred Christian girl, she's not thinking about trying to hook up with a married man at all. So she may find him handsome. She may find him attractive. She is not thinking that she's going to end up romantically involved with him at this point. But the doctor, that's a possibility.
Yes.
And another interesting thing about this scene, so we come to the point where you have the ceremony of the presentation of the rents, and there's like this elaborate, uncomfortable looking chair that Vincent Price points out came over with his original ancestors in the 1600s, that he's sitting in on a raised platform while there's his lackey in chief standing at a podium calling up, tenants one by one. And the first one is Klaus Leaker, I believe, who's played by Harry Morgan. And I am so mad at myself because the first few times I watched it, I did not know who this was, even though I'm like, why do I know this voice? And why does
the voice is familiar? Where have I heard it before?
Captain Potter from MASH.
Colonel Potter.
Colonel Potter, thank you. Colonel Potter from MASH. And I'm so mad at myself because as a kid, MASH was my favorite show to watch. And once I realized that, I'm like, how did I not guess right away?
If you hadn't mentioned it, I might not have caught it. But once I was looking for it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Once there's you're like, how? Because the face is so obvious, the voice is so obvious.
Yep.
But Klaus is an interesting character. So there's I think maybe 2 or 3 scenes where the Klaus is in it.
A couple.
And he owns it. It's awesome. He's very passionate. He uses a speech. He's not paying his rent. This is during the anti-rent movement. Actually, it was called the anti-rent wars that happened. But he stands up and is like, "I am not paying you anything." You also get Dr. Turner's character, because Dr. Turner's clearly on the side of the farmers, and he was standing there because he was ready to speak for them and try to reason with Nicholas Van Ryn about, we can settle this peacefully, but we're not, but it's going to get settled. And, basically Nicholas's response to this, if you're not paying rent, the authorities remove you from the property by noon tomorrow. And that's that, And so all the other farmers fall in line. They weren't going to pay their rents, and they're all now, well, we'll bring them tomorrow. Is that okay? And
it's one of those times where you must all stick together or fall one by one.
Yeah. And of course, then
the importance of unions.
Yeah. Klaus gets mad, pulls out a knife and lunges at the platform. Dr. Turner stops him, and and you see this tension again between Nicholas and Dr. Turner, where he's like, "I guess I should thank you for saving my life." And Dr. Turner's like, "I give a shit about your life. I just wanted to prevent a tragedy."
Yeah. And then it's something like your death would cause them more problems.
Yeah.
It's clear he wasn't saving him for his sake. He was halting the farmer for their sake.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then there's, Nicholas decides to give a speech, and basically the gist of it is, this is my fucking land. I'm not giving it up. You will pay your rent, or I'll kick your asses off. Find somebody who will. It's the summary of it. I am Nicholas Van Ryan. This is mine. Fuck you.
Pretty much.
I am the lord of the manor, and that is all.
He's of course much more eloquent than I. Then we cut and we're in the ball, and we have Miranda in this lovely ball gown, and looking beautiful, of course, because Jean is fucking gorgeous. It's
She's amazing. She's so beautiful.
But you can see she feels out of place and awkward because she's walking around and nobody's talking to her. And one gentleman stops to talk to her, clearly knows who she is, and starting to start a conversation. And he gets interrupted by some other people that start speaking French, and turns away from her, and she's left standing there like, I maybe I'm the only one who's ever had that experience, but we were
I've had it.
And you don't know what to do with yourself. It's like the most awful feeling, because they were talking to you and then they just stop and walk away. Basically, you're just standing there like, I'll go find a hole to crawl in, because I don't know, corner to hide in, and if you're an introvert, it's even worse. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah. My ex-husband had this thing, like, when we would meet a bunch of his friends, and he wouldn't introduce me. And as you know how, like, you're in a circle standing talking, he would suddenly move so that he's like was edging me out, so that I was like behind him out of the circle. I'm like, hello, I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and then then we hit a sort of Mean Girls situation afterwards, because Miranda wanders off, and she sees like, a little area where 3-4 women are sitting chatting, and she politely asks if she can join them. And they stop for a minute, and they kind of look like they're debating whether or not to tell her no. But in the end, they're like, no, please join us. And I will say this, as far as Mean Girls situations go, I don't think these girls were being that mean. I think they were kind of trying. They weren't trying very hard, but they were kind of trying, they were trying to include her in the conversation.
Yeah. Their biases still showed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they kept fucking up her name. They didn't understand that she could possibly be, anything but a van something.
I was going to say, these were obviously like the daughters of other patroons. And so they had no concept of someone not being a van, because everyone's a van. All of their friends are vans. They all come from the patroons. And I thought that was interesting. I don't think they were trying to be mean and exclusionary. I think it's just that they literally did not know that there was any way that somebody could be not of their caliber and be in a party like this.
They would, they would just assume that you're here, so you must be one of us. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and also I think this sort of comes from the play where, we go back to Ephraim and his feeling of insecurity. And I think that's what did Miranda into, is very similar. So even though they weren't trying to make her feel insecure, she was feeling out of place, and she got defensive, and she went off. So, she even mentions, like, they, ask her where she's from. She says Connecticut. They're like, do you know Greenwich? She's like, yeah, I live near there. And says, how the farmers call it, like, horse neck every now and then. Yep. And, they kind of like, horse neck. Ooh, that's crude. And when she says that, her father owned a farm near Greenwich, they're like, oh, so she's like, he's a farmer. Because of course their first assumption would be he's a patroon because he owns a farm. And she's like, no, he's a farmer. And then they're like shocked, like, he owns and farms his own land. Like, and then she just loses it. And she like repeats her father's words about, my father would rather own his own rocky piece of infertile land than, farm the most fertile lands in the world for somebody else, and just gets up and huffs away.
She flounces out with all the flounce she has.
Yes. And then is immediately mortified afterwards, because she's that's the first scene.
And she's like,
I can't fault her. I mean, like, when you feel odd and you get defensive, that shit just happens. It does. But then Magda shows up and throws some epic shade here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when I say epic shade, and like why I quit my hero, because she starts it off as if it's a nice compliment thing, and then smacks the shit out of you at the end of it. So, I mean, she comes out in person and says, oh, but you're, that beautiful dress, you're the most beautiful girl at this ball. Everyone says so. And, Miranda's like, everyone? She's like, well, all the servants.
Yeah. The line that I took away from that one was when she says, I can't understand why you haven't danced. I was like, oh, oh, why did she twist that knife a little more?
Then you're the most beautiful woman here,
Because
according to the servants.
Because on the surface, it sounds, well, I don't understand. On the double speak level, it's you don't belong and they know it. That's why nobody's asked you.
Doesn't matter how pretty you are, you're stepping above your class, which is interesting because then when Nicholas comes in and has this lovely conversation about whether or not she's enjoying herself, which of course she is, and then he just asks her to dance. Well, actually, he didn't even ask her to dance. He basically is like, well, he asks her, but it's like, you're going to dance. I don't care if you say no. Because, you know, she objects and he's like, if they laugh, we'll laugh louder. I'm Nicholas Van Ryan. They won't laugh at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he dances with her. And it's interesting
with
because
me.
Yeah. You see all the faces of the people. And at one point you see Magda come down the stairs and the look of like scandal on her face that like he's dancing with her, you know?
Well, and you see one of the crowd of the girls that had been talking earlier. You see in the background, you see her like to go to her other friends. And there's very much these, you know.
Yeah. And this look of just, you know, and some of them walk away in disgust. But what's really heartbreaking is they flash on Johanna, who I will bet Nicholas didn't ask to dance once, and that's his fucking wife. And she just looks so crestfallen as he's dancing by and laughing.
I understand her feelings.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah, it's obvious that there's not a lot of love left in their relationship. So you can see where she's like, oh, okay. I see.
Certainly not on his part. I do get the feeling she is still trying to desperately hold on to it. No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just get the feeling she's just been basically neglected, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's and I have some taglines about that, you know, later.
Yeah. So the ball's over. Oh, another note. So if you'll notice all the ball gowns, they all have like little extra stuff between the décolletage and the neckline. That was the censors. They were like, there's titties. We can't have titties. And like that was about the only thing that they listened to for like the censorship board, like for the code board. Like they made a whole bunch of other suggestions about replacing things in the story writing wise, and Mankiewicz ignored them all. But the titties got covered.
You know, sometimes you give on one thing so that you can get others past.
Got to cover them up. Can't have cleavage showing. No cleavage. So you'll see that all those necklines look a little weird because of that. Like they don't look quite period because of that. Let's put it that way.
They're not.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
So cut ahead. We now have Nicholas in his wife's room, who's Johanna is having a terrible cold, and she's, you know, munching on her bonbons and having bad head cold and miserable and complaining. And, you know, I mean, I think in the book, she was supposed to be more of a nuisance and more of a grotesque type character and more, you know, but in the movie, she's just a little pathetic and sad. And, you know, she's complaining and miserable and she's got nothing. You know what I mean? Like all she's got is her bonbons and like her trips to New York because her husband doesn't give a fuck about it for the most part.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, Nicholas is like rapsing romantic about the storm over the Catskills, and Johanna's like, yeah, it's miserable. I'm miserable and it's not romantic, but I'm sick. Can't you even call the doctor? And, you know,
I feel like poop. This is miserable.
Don't like it. It's awful. And, yeah, not having it. And he just is not very sympathetic at first. And he kind of actually, he goes back and forth between feigning sympathy and just being a dick. And not even just sometimes being a dick, sometimes just being annoyed with her whine, you know, which, okay. So he has this oleander brought to her room, which all of us, you know, if you read enough cozy mysteries, murder mysteries, like, we're all like oleander.
Yeah, we know what that means.
We know it's coming here, which, you know, actually would have been introduced in that cut scene with the count. But again, they wanted to keep this more as a slow reveal. So generally your audience is not supposed to be realizing this point that the oleander is a terrible thing. It's supposed to come across as the way Johanna took it, which is a romantic gesture, his favorite plant being put in a room.
Oh, such lovely flowers.
And it's again heartbreaking because Johanna is very moved by this gesture. She's like, oh, who's your favorite Oleander, and he's like, yes, dear, I thought it would cheer you. And she's immediately perked up and she's talking about, if I feel better, when I do, can we, go on a trip, just us? And he's like, oh, of course, and she's like,
She's like a beaten down dog in it, like a beaten down puppy. She's like a beaten down puppy. Yeah. It hurts. It hurts to see.
Yeah. Then she starts complaining again, and he goes to go off to his tower room. And I love this little line though. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to see if it's the same line that I have.
Oh, what could you possibly be doing in that room? Anything from pinning butterflies?
No, mine is a different line. That I think she is somewhat. She's perceptive enough. She knows about the situation, about how things are going on, the reality of the situation between her and her husband, because she says, sometimes I think you hate me and want me to die. I'm like, yeah. Well, yeah. He does.
Quite clearly, yeah. It comes out later. But I just thought the line was funny where she's like, what could you possibly be doing in that tower room? And he's like, anything from pinning butterflies to hiding a insane twin brother, I think it was. And I just thought that was funny given his later movies.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
Yeah. But she also makes some comment about like, what do you think the servants would think about you spending all that time in a tower room? And he's like, I think it's funny that you give any thought at all to what the servants think. There's all that. Then of course he starts going towards his tower room, but he gets interrupted by Magda, who brings to his attention that Dr. Turner is downstairs waiting for him and needs to talk to him. And he's like, send him away. I don't want to talk to that guy. And then you can see like, then he's like, I wonder. So then he changes his mind. Yeah, he goes to see Dr. Turner, and Dr. Turner is there because Klaus has gotten in trouble through not really any fault of his own. He's been accused of murder, but the doctor knows he didn't do it because he was with him. They were at an anti-rent rally, and somebody got killed. And the patroons, who were the authority in that area, were pinning it on Klaus because they were mad about him attacking Nicholas earlier.
Yeah.
So Dr. Turner's there just to try to get at least one patroon to ensure that a fair trial happens and that Klaus isn't railroaded and wrongly convicted of murder. And at first, of course, Nicholas is like, I give any more shit about this guy's life than you did about mine, like turnabout's fair play. Why do I give a damn about this guy, Right. And it's interesting because at the same time, you can see where like, again, wheels turning in Nicholas's mind and Miranda's coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
And so you wonder if it's a dual purpose here where like his change of heart was the way he can play the doctor in his plans. Because he already had the idea of what he was going to do to his wife, and that's why that plant was there. But like the doctor being fortuitously there, I think he was thinking he can like play that in, which he does, and he can play up to Miranda at this point too, because she's coming down the stairs, some compassion for his.
That's how I took it. I took it as
up as a better person. Here's compassion for my wife. There's compassion for Klaus. We're really not that. I'm not that bad of a person.
Right.
I'm a nice guy.
I'm not this tyrant everyone makes me out to be. Look, I'm magnanimous. Look what I've done for the people.
Yeah. So he quickly tells Dr. Turner that he, of course, will ensure that Klaus has a fair trial. And then he was like, and of course, Dr. Turner's like, that's a quick change of heart. What's going on with. And of course, when the ask comes back, it doesn't sound like even an ask, because it's just like, well, my wife has a head cold. Please, could you just check on her? Because that's not even something like 10 to 1. Even if he had refused to help with Klaus and he said, my wife is sick, will you look at her? Dr. Turner would have gone and looked at her anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You get that impression about the doctor. So, of course, the doctor's like, of course, I'll look at her. And he goes and sees Johanna. And it's a severe head cold, and he has drops for her. And now this is interesting. So I'm a big girl. You ladies are also, big girls. And I'm sure we've all dealt with the doctor, like, I have a broken arm. Can you help me? And the doctor, well, maybe you should lose some weight.
Yeah. I have a girl on my friends list just went through something very similar, like her shoulder or her elbow or something was out of whack, and she got that. I'm like,
Which interestingly, because like I thought that's kind of where they were going at first, but then when I'm watching, I really don't think that they are.
No, I don't think they did. I don't think
Like
they
when
did.
he talks about like her eating these foods and stuff, when I was thinking about it, he's not calling out her weight really.
No.
And actually, rich foods, when you eat them with the head cold, it causes you to build up more phlegm. Like when you drink like the dairy and the icing and stuff like that, it actually does cause an increase in phlegm. So I'm like, I think they were being a lot more sensitive than like, my initial gut check was like, oh, if you stop eating all this rich food, you wouldn't have a head cold. And I'm like, no, that's what he's doing.
No, it did seem like he was more like, oh, these things have a reaction, more like he was concerned for inflammation and stuff. So.
Yeah. So, which is also kind of advanced medical stuff for a movie. It's like,
yeah.
Which even later on when they go into Oleander, they legit talk about
they do, and that one kind of surprised me. But yeah, he does. I mean, the doctor is, and then he does make that astute observation later about her eating.
Yeah,
or that he says later on that she may be eating to fill in emptiness.
Yeah.
Well, which is a thing.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
So
okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't remember. I thought it was earlier. Okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, he leaves. He's like, you got a cold, maybe cut back on the rich foods, take these drops, you'll be fine in a couple of days. And of course, she's like, Doctor so-and-so always says 2 weeks. He's like, well, he's probably right. You should rest for 2 weeks, but I have a hard time keeping most of my patients in bed for half an hour. So,
yeah.
Different class. So he leaves, of course, he doesn't leave. He leaves the room, and Nicholas has already insisted that the doctor stay for dinner. And he's like, go, sit in the lounge with Miranda. I'm going to visit with my wife for a while. And there's a little more intimacy and a little more hope for her. Like she mentions something like, you actually want to spend some time with me?
That
it's
hurt.
Really sad.
That was another one, which just, you wouldn't, that she's, this is going to be a bad phrase, dying for his attention.
Yeah. And of course you spend some time with her, and then he says, let me get you some cake. I think this is actually also where she talks about going away with just him for a while. And he's like, oh, of course.
I think it is.
She's like, I feel better already. And then he goes and gets her his cake, her cake. And then cuts down to like where Dr. Turner and Miranda are talking in the sitting room, I guess. And you see there's tension between them, but he's still attracted. But you can see that perhaps she's already kind of turned her eye toward Nicholas despite him being married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's a little standoffish with Dr. Turner at this point now. Interestingly enough, they go to dinner. Nicholas apologizes because he just lost track of the time reminiscing with his wife, because he spends so much time doing that with her. And also has insisted the doctor spend the night. And again, just haughtily is like, no arguments. It's already done, don't even bother. They have, then it cuts to the evening with Catherine and Miranda. You see the little girl coming down the steps, and Miranda sees her. And as the audience,
it was a dark and stormy night.
You hear this singing and this harpsichord playing, but of course the only person in the movie who's hearing this in the scene is Catherine, and Miranda is not hearing it, and she's being sympathetic. And of course Catherine goes from enjoying it and thinking it's beautiful to being terrified by it and wanting it to stop. And of course that's right about the peak of when our next scene, when the Magda comes running for the doctor. It happens to be right after Miranda has put Catherine to bed, and shockingly, I know you guys are like, what? Yes, Johanna's dead. Which that was funny because Magda's like, she started vomiting like 45 minutes ago. And I'm like, and you didn't get the doctor around then?
Yeah, really. The doctor's been in the house the whole time.
That seems strange to me. But she didn't. Apparently, she went and got the doctor. And of course, by the time, and Nicholas Van Ryn, and by the time they show up, Johanna's dead. And of course, there's a scene where like, you could see Dr. Turner's mortified. He's like, did you give her anything else? And Magda's like, no. Did she take anything else? No, not while I was in the room. And of course, Nicholas is like, and she was the only one in the room with her. And when she wasn't in the room with her, I was. And then he's like, I gave her some cake. You're like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
And then, the doctor's like, gastritis?
And he's like, I guess.
And then Nicholas is like, are you sure maybe it wasn't worse than you thought it was? And you just kind of dismissed it, planting that seed that he's maybe medically inept.
Right.
And you can just, and the doctor's honest. He's like, I guess it's possible. And he's really just tore up that he didn't know what happened to her, and even has that conversation with Miranda. It's like, I'm a doctor. I should know what happened to her. And that's also the scene we were talking about where he makes that comment about how she ate.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. Yeah. And now I remember.
Yeah.
Which I noticed because it pretty much is hinting at eating disorders. He's like, the way she ate with so much passion, it's almost as if she was trying to substitute it for something else.
Yeah.
And not that all eating disorders are based around that, but one of the ones for overeating, binge eating, one of the causes can be that you're trying to fulfill some other need that way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about it any times, like, there's some people who, when they get under severe stress, like, they can't eat at all.
Mm-hmm.
Me, severe stress, give me the box of Girl Scout cookies. It is a pure emotional response.
Yeah. And, I mean, we can go on about eating disorders.
Oh God, yeah, that's a whole topic in and of itself, outside the purview of our movie.
Yeah, and also the way obese people are treated. That's a whole other.
But it was a refreshing take that he wasn't like, what do I want to say? He wasn't necessarily blaming her. He was just saying, obviously, she had some things going on in her life that made it so that eating was more pleasurable for her than anything else. That's it.
Yeah, it was very sympathetic and not judgmental. It was kind of
no, it was a kind of shocking, honestly, for this era of movie.
Agree. I would have expected different views.
Yeah, I was shocked by it too, and I was like, wow, whoa. Makes me wonder more and more about Joseph Mankiewicz and possibly Anya Seton. I don't know if she wrote that in her book. I have not read the book.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it does make me want to look up the source material of the book.
Oh, but so this is a side note. Yeah, this is a side note, and I just have to bring it because I know the three of us will definitely appreciate it. I believe that it was mentioned in the commentary that in the book, there's a scene where Nicholas Van Ryn speaks to Edgar Allan Poe. And they contemplated putting it in the movie, and I'm like, how epic would that have been where Vincent Price gets to interact with Edgar Allan Poe?
Oh, my heart.
But didn't happen, but I just thought that was funny. So, of course, though, Johanna's dead. Again, this is another one where I'm going to go to you because I thought this was really fucked up and weird. So the next scene you see after this, they cut out from the death is Nicholas in Miranda's motherfucking room with her in bed still. Well, like the death balls are tolling for Johanna, and I'm like, what the fuck is this dude doing in a room? I mean, like,
his wife isn't even. Yeah, his wife isn't even cold. Yeah, agree.
This is fucking scandalous.
Extremely.
And she's just chill with it. I'm like, what?
Red flag. Sorry, I was sitting here and I saw the red Sharpie sit in front of me earlier. I'm like, oh, I missed an opportunity.
No, that's perfect. I'm so but yeah, no, it's terrible. And I was like, this is weird. And of course, at first he's like talking all nostalgic about, when the bells tolled for him and his wife's wedding, and now they're this. And then the next thing he's hitting on Miranda. Like, just.
He must know that we were inevitable. Oh, my word. And I'm sorry, ladies, you or I would ever hear something like that. We'd be like, really?
Dude, I'm like,
yeah.
Like, even if I was into it, dude, once they start making it like it was a foregone conclusion, it no longer is. I will stubbornly and pridefully be like, fuck you then. I have issues, though. I'm a little extreme. But yeah, I mean, he's all, and, of course, she's Jamira. And at this point, she is like, your wife just died. This is not the conversation we should be having on the eve of her death,
Right.
But the funny thing is, like, she sort of chastises him, and then he's like, I'm sorry, but I had to say it, and you're the only person to say it too, And then he goes to walk away, and she says, I think just like, good night, Nicholas. And he gets this look on his face as walking his way, like he knows that he has. And it's the most arrogant, haughty look. And I love Vincent Price, but I wanted to jump through the screen and slap that look the fuck off his face.
I think it's a testament to his acting of what his face says.
I'm just like, you bastard.
Yeah, he knows he's set the hook. He knows he's won at this point.
And the next thing you know, there's Miranda and a coach going back to Greenwich, because of course, I mean, it would be completely unseemly if he just kept her in the house and married her right away. We have to have
just
some
live
reason.
there. She can't just live there with a single man and his child. No.
She's not married. She can't,
Have to have some decorum here. So he sends her back. And of course, you have this rather awkward scene. And I so feel for Gene Tierney during this scene where Dr. Turner like basically rides up to the carriage and is in effect like future proposing to her. I mean, he's like, I kind of thought we sort of had a thing. I know the last few interactions were weird, but I was hoping in time. And the look on Gene Tierney's face, I know that we've all had that look when some guy that you are not interested in is hitting on you and you don't want to hurt their feelings. And you were like, feel like you're trapped and you have no idea how the fuck to make this happen. Because it's also, so dude, you may not know this, but when we get put in that position where we have to try to clarify to a guy that we're not interested in, it's also very scary because often when we make this clarification, the guy goes nuts and like, you don't know if you're going to have to like stab a dude to get him the fuck away from you or, they can lose their shit.
Yeah.
No matter how nice you are. Because I hate when people are like, just be nice. I'm like, yeah, that always solves everything for us, just being nice.
Yeah. And then they're still going to be like, oh, well, she was nice, so she must not really mean it.
Yeah. So there must be
hope. Well, no,
but
because it's like I can't say fuck off because
then I didn't get
right.
I don't
want to
get
hurt.
The thing here. So to be fair to Dr. Turner, he's not pressing her beyond that one.
No.
He's like, I said in time, and she gets that look. He's like, oh, so there is no hope. And then he kind of leaves her alone. He does not become a dick and go after her. But the look on Gene Tierney's face, that little like, fuck, what do I do? Look.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yep.
I felt that in my soul. But I also was like, I don't know that I'd have told him no, even if I was still engaged. I'm like,
I was like,
plenty of time when Nicholas is.
I thought like when the doctor says, well, I said in time, I'm like, dude, she already told you no.
Well, she hadn't said anything.
True.
She just made a face. And so when she was like, he was like, but in time, and okay, no, right, we're definitely past it. So I mean, had she said no, and then he said in time, I would agree with you, but she really hadn't commented at this point. It was just facial expression. So
yeah,
but she was able to read enough that she was not currently interested in. So the in time, but no, okay. But yeah, it could be construed as a little pushy, to be fair to you. Yeah. But so she's home. And then, we deal with Daddy Ephraim, who is actually at his most prickish. You get the defensive thing again. So he, they come back from church. He calls Miranda into a room and he just starts going after her, like about how she's putting on airs, which hadn't been the case, But he's getting defensive. She came back with fancy clothes and a fancy carriage. And he's thinking that the reason why she's seeming off is because she now thinks everybody else is beneath her, which is so unfair to Miranda on so many levels.
It is. The mom.
It's just Daddy Wells' self-defense because he's probably feeling like he's not enough anymore because. But the funniest line I've ever got was I forgot exactly where in context it came in this conversation, but he said something like a woman ought to get a man and then watch him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, please don't program us like that anymore because too many of us settle just to have a guy. And don't. So no, ladies,
don't do this.
and those who don't identify as either, never pick a person just because you can get them,
or because they're there, or whatever. Trust me, eventually someone will come along that can click all the boxes. So don't settle. It's
at least for Betsy. I don't know for me, but I can say this: even if they don't come along, it's not worth settling. It's just not. It's miserable. Don't do it.
You won't be happy.
If they make toys, it's fine.
You'll be fine.
So anyway. But yeah, so Ephraim is just going at it for just, apparently putting on airs and nothing being good enough for her. And then, of course, he's interrupted.
There's implication, like he says something like, you should be married. And I'm like, she's been back for a minute and a half as far as we're concerned. I'm sure it's been like a month or something, but how many offers have come in a month that he's like, you keep turning down these boys? I'm like,
And if she keep turning them
Offers.
down, they're not going to come back. You know?
Yeah. But this is also one of my favorite scenes. So this little kid shows up with a letter. He hands it to Ephraim. And Ephraim's like, who's it from? He's like, I don't know, but I know how you could find out. And Ephraim looks at him and he goes, read it.
Yeah.
Like the little
That
prick.
was
So
great.
surprised did he get backhanded?
Well, and then the older brother or like her brother comes in and is like, get out. He kicks the little kid out, but it was really funny. It was very funny.
Yeah.
I loved it. I'm like, this is like a well moment. I wonder if Mankiewicz put it in there just to lighthearten the scene after Ephraim had been like
Could be.
being so almost abusive to poor Miranda at that point, you know.
It was
But of
odd.
course, he gets a letter. He comes in. It's Van Ryan saying, I'm going to be here soon. And of course, Miranda takes up off the stairs to go put on her pretty dress.
Mhm.
Because the whole thing is like, they don't really say it in the movie, but this had all been worked out before she left. Like Nicholas had basically already proposed to her. She was just waiting for him to come get.
Yeah, she knew they had to take some time.
Yeah. So, and then that's why she was mooning about not eating and sleeping, just because she's waiting
Oh.
for her love to come take her away. And of course, you know, Nicholas shows up. There's this lovely touching scene where, like, again, it's like they do a good job of not making him like complete villain. Like, you know, he clearly looks up. He seems very entranced by Miranda. He just goes straight to her, kisses her, you know, and then takes Ephraim aside and starts discussing, hey, I'm going to marry your daughter.
So
And there's a lovely scene between Miranda and her mother.
I
Abby.
loved that in between scene.
A quick note about Anne Revere. So Anne Revere was a very prolific actress at this time as well, until McCarthyism, and she was pulled up between the House of Un-American Activities, and she pleaded the fifth, and they blacklisted her for quite some time. And I think she had a resurgence, I believe, in like the 70s or 80s for a while. But for a while, you would not see her in anything because they completely blacklisted her and for saying literally nothing. So just a note there. But yes, so very touching scene where like Abby's like, you know, are you sure this is what you want? And one of my best favorite lines again, where she's like, you can't marry a dream, Miranda. And this is like a good warning to everybody. You need to focus on what is really there and not what you want to be there.
I have a lot of
Miranda was
comments about the same thing.
Miranda was totally about what she was dreaming was there. You know, all the Gothic novels all the romance she had read, all the, you know, the imagery, the getting caught up in being the mistress of Dragonwyck, and the dashing figure that Van Ryan put forth, and, you know, the way he seemed to be her hero. You know, I mean, she was caught up completely in a dream, and her mom knew it, and her mom tried to tell her.
Yeah. There was her mother who also said the line, I'm sure he has fine manners.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because that's a line, like, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say that says more sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's one of those.
Mhm.
Like, I know he's a dick, but I'm not going to say he's a dick.
I'm sure it comes across as having great manners.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Indeed.
you know, and then you have the scene with, you know, where Ephraim calls him in, and he's like, you know, this tells Abby, he's like, this guy wants to marry her. And, you know, basically Abby's like, at this point, it's not, what are we going to do? Or if we're going to let him, it's, you know, it's a foregone conclusion, you know?
Yeah.
Like that. And then of course we also get Nicholas being a red flag dick at this point too, where he's already said like, your objections are invalid, you know, it's going to happen. I've already contacted the pastor. Yeah. Already contacted the pastor. He's going to be here at 3:00 today. And then you see that, like, poor Abby, she's like just mortified for her daughter, or not even mortified. She's so worried for her daughter. She's terrified for her. You see this. She's like, you know, she doesn't even have a wedding dress. This is this girl's wedding. Nothing's ready. You're going to have her get married tomorrow. And like, you know, it's like, the ceremony will outdo the garb, but it'll be fine. You know, whatever dress will always be cherished as her wedding dress. You know, fuck her dreams. You know, and of course, Miranda's just like, whatever Nicholas wants. Find out what you want. Fight for it. Please. Yeah. Then we cut till she's back at Dragonwyck, and you notice whole new staff. There's no Magda anymore. There's no Thompson. We have a whole different staff. Now they don't go into it in the movie. Like I had originally assumed that like Miranda had replaced the staff, but with the exception of her little maid, which we'll get to, she didn't. In the interim, when she was away with her parents, Nicholas had canned the entire old staff and replaced them.
Was
And
that
like
something that was covered in deleted scenes, or?
They just mentioned it in the commentary that basically, I think it was
Okay.
in the book, but I don't think they put any deleted scenes. But they
Okay.
mentioned that they thought it was his way of distancing himself from his own heinous act of killing his wife and everything, that he got rid of anybody that was a memory of her time there. And also, you notice that Catherine's away at boarding school.
Yes.
I assume boarding school. She's clearly not in the house because they're shipping a doll to her. They, you know, they talk about that. So poor Catherine is just gone.
He basically
With a
got
little
rid of her as well.
Yeah, no longer in the house as well. So, but we have Miranda there talking with the new staff, being the lady of the house, talking over the menus and stuff like that. And it's also revealed at this point that she's pregnant. And then of course Nicholas comes home, and it's funny because like the way they do this, it makes it seem like they were just very happy, romantic couple thing going on. They very happy to see each other, passionate kiss, great time. And then
When you're
Peggy
not
and
with
Mallory.
me, I'm not anything.
Did that not make you want to vomit?
Yeah, I was like, my line says, classic low self-esteem.
I looked at Seth and I was like, I adore you. Like, I truly adore you. And I would never say anything like that to you, Clark. Ugh.
Like, I
He's like,
can't.
I don't want you to. Like,
I
God,
was just gonna say that I couldn't imagine him wanting to hear something like that. You know,
No.
that was not the impression I've gotten off of the times that I've talked.
No, but yeah, we're watching it side by side, and I was like, never gonna say that. Sorry.
I think I missed because I would have loved to have watched it with you guys to hear some of the commentary you might give to Seth.
Oh, it's a good time between the two of us when we're watching movies.
Yeah. So of course Peggy O'Malley walks in, played by, which I did not catch until I looked at the cast list, Jessica Tandy.
I wouldn't have known if you hadn't mentioned it.
And it's funny too, because like, so the maid's in it so little, but she does a fucking epic job. And yeah. So, but yeah, I'm making a generalization, but we all know Jessica Tandy from when she was in her like fucking 70s and 80s, you know?
Yeah.
So we know her from Driving Miss Daisy, Batteries Not Included, Cocoon, Fried Green Tomatoes. So we had never really noticed her young. Phenomenal actress. I loved her. I was heartbroken when she was, you know, when she died. I'm also heartbroken at the fact that Hugh Cronin remarried after she died. And I was like, what? No. Better go to the grave after her. Yeah. But anyway, but when you know it and you look at it, you can see the features. But yeah, but like without knowing it, like without reading the cast list, I would not have caught it. But I thought Jessica Tandy as Peggy O'Malley did this wonderful job. She has this interesting little Irish accent. She's supposed to have a deformity where she's kind of limping, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she comes bursting in the room. Sorry, go ahead, Betsy. You're saying something.
I think they did a good job of making it so that it's like it's subtle. She has a bit of a deformity. I'm gonna guess probably what we would call a club foot.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, where it's just like probably a birth defect. The foot was like a little awkward, and they can fix that now, but then they could not. So they would still have the deformity, but it wouldn't hurt anything. She can still work, she can still function, she can still walk just fine. But she does have this slight limp because it just moves things a little bit. If I were guessing, which I am, but putting it on there just by the way that she limped a bit, it didn't seem like anything huge. It was probably something simple.
But you have this cute little banter that happens back and forth after that between
that was adorable.
and Peggy, and like which basically though highlights all of Peggy's ineptitude as a maid. But
I can't. She couldn't cook. She couldn't sew. She couldn't iron.
But it also makes it very clear that they have an affection for each other, and the way that Peggy had come in and been like, "You didn't eat. You need to eat next." You know, just you can see what the reason why that Miranda wanted around is because it was like a family figure, you know, like a sister or a mom or somebody who was there to give her more support. But this is where we get like a real insight into Nicholas Van Ryan's character, because
indeed,
just has this look of disgust the moment Peggy lips into the room, and as soon as she leaves, he's like, what is that disformed, sloppy little creature, and why
Sure.
is she here? You know, and also starts giving us insight that although at first it seemed like their marriage was wonderfully happy, it seemed like it's way dysfunctional because not just because of this, but you know, you could see that more is coming out about Miranda being unhappy because like Nicholas is like telling him get rid of her. And you know, you can tell that there's been other things that perhaps have gone in the past where she's done something and he hasn't liked her choices, maybe. And he tells her get rid of her, and she's like, please, can I keep her? It's just, you know, a small thing. And he's like, no. And then he tries to do like what he would do for Johanna. Like, you know, if Johanna was like not wanting to do something or whatever, he would do what he was going to do and then like hand her like a pastry, right? But with Miranda, he goes to hand her something from Tiffany's, I think Mr. Tiffany's store.
I was going to say Mr.
Yeah.
Tiffany's little store.
Yeah. And like he, you know, opens it. I think he opens the box and she doesn't even look at it. Like, or he hands a box towards her and she doesn't even take it. And she's like,
How could you?
yeah, she
Oh.
just goes straight at him. You see Miranda's teeth are there still. She's like, how could you?
Yeah.
Like, there's, you know, like it's some kind of thing she did as opposed to just a deformity that had, of course, her being very Christian, like just an act of God, you know, is what she
Yeah.
throws out. And then that gets into the even more scandalous thing where, you know, she's like, you do believe in God. Now, people keep in mind that at this point in time, it's 1944, and either you believed in God or you were a horrible, heinous person. There was
Yep.
There was no in between.
like being
no.
atheist was akin to being like a baby murderer.
Being an atheist was akin to being a communist. which-
Communist, yeah.
That as well. So yeah. So, you know, Nicholas is like, no, I'm not. I don't believe in God. I believe in myself. And, you know,
Although I did like that line, I don't believe in God, I believe in myself. I was like, oh, that's ahead of its time. I've heard
Let's
people
see,
say that now.
Yeah,
So for
I was-
us,
I
this is
believe
not
in
a horrible
myself.
reveal.
Yeah, I believe in myself and I'm answerable to myself. That was the
Which, if you had morals, is acceptable.
yeah.
He, however, does not.
I was gonna say, but he doesn't have morals, so that's a problem.
A little bit problematic, which is interesting because her thing of it, like, so he starts teasing her about her belief in God and stuff like that. But so I liked as well. Like she, you know, he's like, you know, God that just comes down if you don't pay attention to the sermon or correctly punishes you. She's like, no, but I think God imbues us with a sense of right and wrong. And that even if nobody else knows, we know when we've done right or wrong, which is weird because I'm kind of a mix in between. Like, I don't believe in that God, but I believe we're imbued with a sense of right or wrong. And that's, we know when we do right or wrong. So I'm like that weird version of it. But so it's interesting. Like both those things are kind of advanced concepts for the time even.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But they made him be an atheist to show his evilness, though. So like, so
Yes,
it's not that
yeah.
advanced when you think about that. You know?
Yeah, it's a little less fun when you're like, oh, well, they just made him an atheist because that made him a bad guy.
Yeah. So which is an interesting scene. So like they get that out and then they sit down at lunch and he's like, should I say grace? And she's like, she doesn't look like,
That's not funny.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, are you being a dick? Yes, you are. And he's like, let me dress our salad. And she gets up and leaves. And you can see he's mortified. Like the servants are there and she has got up and run and he's mortified.
He is
and
lit.
pissed.
He's mad.
Now, this comes to the next scene, which actually caused another issue between Lubitz and Mankiewicz. When he goes into a room to have it out with her, he leaves the door open. And like Lubitz was like, no, you would not leave the door open. He would shut that door. Like, you know,
He
so
would
that's
want
when he's
the-
over
See-
Mankiewicz his shoulder.
Yeah, when I was watching that and like the way he closes the door, it's very clear that he's thinking that she's about to say something that she knows what he did. That's kind of what I took
Oh,
away
he
from
didn't
it.
close the door. That's the thing. He left that door wide open.
I thought in the later on in the scene.
No, in this scene, right after he
Right.
left it wide open.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's why Lubitz was like, no, there's no way a guy like this in this kind of class level period would leave a door open to have a private argument with his wife where the servants could hear it. I mean, the servants likely could hear it anyway, but he would not
Oh,
have left the door open. And it's like, it seems like a thing, but to Lubitz, that was like the last thing. He was like, no, I can't.
I mean, I get where he's coming from because I agree. Like he would not
Oh,
have
I
let the
agree
servants
too.
hear this argument that they were
Yeah.
about to have because he was going to chastise his wife. He would not have wanted them to hear that.
No. I agree too, but I also figure at this point, Mankiewicz had probably had Lovitz over his shoulder for so long with so many things that was probably seemed nitpicky. That he was probably like, I give a fuck about the door, get the hell off my set.
But
It's
I get
likely
that
what
too.
happened.
Yeah.
I get that too.
So-
but I can see where he was coming from.
Yeah,
But
no, but I
it
agree.
didn't
Lovitz was
distract that
completely
much
correct.
from the scene for me. So
Yeah, I mean, in scheme of things, it really doesn't make that much difference. But yeah, when you watch it, you're like, no, he told her to close that door. Like, that's weird. It was a weird call on Mankiewicz's part too. Like, why the hell would you? Oh, well, okay, whatever. So they have a little more of this fight where finally Miranda reveals that two things: one, that she's pregnant, and two, that she felt like she has done nothing right this whole marriage, because she comes out, she's like, now have I finally done something right? Have I finally done something deserving of your love? And she also uses that to bargain to keep Peggy.
I did like
I
that
have
she
Peggy's my reward.
like basically she did what he does, which is I want to get my way. Here's something you wanted. Can I get what I want now?
Yeah.
Because he was trying to do it with the Tiffany box earlier, like, I'm firing your maid, here, have jewelry. And she's like, I'm burying your child. Can I have my maid now?
Made back. It's sad because it's the only bargaining chip she had. You know, because he
Well,
is
to be
so
fair.
desperate for a son.
Yes. Also, to be fair, like, she didn't start it out as a party. She's just miserable and she's mad at him for not believing in God. And she's like, I will continue to believe in God, and my son will complete. And that's where the reveal happens. And then once the reveal happens, then she sees her opportunity. And yes, she does absolutely bargain ship with it. And
I am
I
not
don't know.
calling her shifty. I'm just saying it's
no.
nice to see him get played by his own game.
Fair enough.
And I also think that it does show that she still has a little bit of fight in her. Because earlier it felt kind of like she was weaker now. Like she was more under his thumb than she had been previously. But this is where you can see, like,
Yeah.
she's not. Like, there's still a bit of fight left in her. She hasn't given up completely. She's not Joanna at this point yet. She still has a little bit of Miranda left in her to keep fighting a little bit for her, what she believes in and what she wants. And
Yes.
I like that. Honestly, I liked it. I'm like, yeah, girl, use what you got. He wants that baby, give it to him, but make sure you get what you want in return.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then we cut ahead, next thing you know, you see pub scene where Klaus is back, our good friend Harry Morgan, and the farmers, there's been a new governor of New York, and they have done away with the patroonship, and now the farmers are able to buy their land. And they have this lovely scene where, like, Klaus is mocking the patroons with his ancestral chair. And to give Nicholas credit, so he walks in on this and he's so concerned about his kid. I mean, obviously he gives a fuck about Miranda, but that he's not even going to deal with this, which, is interesting because he could have been like, I'm going to kill that dude. And
Yeah.
But instead he goes straight for the doctor, and the doctor's like, what do you want from me? He's like, Miranda, and of course, as soon as you mention Miranda, Dr. Turner's like, okay, I'll be
Yeah.
Pretty much ends the argument right there. And he goes, and because, man, early doctors, the way they just handed out opium, it's just.
Well, it's that, and in the in any of the
We gave
movies
the mother-
set in like
Lot
any
of
of the movies set in like the 40s and 50s, in those movies, they're like, oh, would you like a sedative? So yeah, long history.
this little heifer.
Yeah.
But he comes in, there's already a doctor there, obviously, because, like, Nicholas has his own prestigious doctor. But, that doctor's so relieved another doctor. So he's like, this man locked me in my room so I couldn't go.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, thank God you're
funny.
here.
Yeah. Turner, though, you can tell it just has fight all along, because, like, he pretty much kicks everybody else out besides the other doctor. And then you see that doctor is torn rag, and he's like, did you give her laudanum? And the doctor's like, yeah, mother's fine. There seems to be a slight irregularity with the baby's heartbeat, but it's hard to tell. And he's like, all right, you go rest. I'll take care of her. But tragically, of course, though, the baby's born. He's born alive, but he has a heart issue. And yeah. Now, this must have been really hard for Jean Tierney, because Rebecca, you and I were talking about this.
Yeah.
She was performing at this stage door canteen, that's what it's called, for the GIs, and a female GI who had the German measles came to the show and interacted with Jean Tierney while she was pregnant. Jean Tierney was pregnant.
Yeah, it was they think the rubella that she caught was from one of her fans.
Well, yeah. And of course, well, not of course, but if you know, basically German measles can have a huge, profound effect on the development of a baby in the
Yep.
womb. And
Major
when
congenital defects.
yeah, and which is exactly what happened to Jean Tierney's baby. Of course, Jean Tierney kept her baby. She worked with her baby. She, the baby lived out its life as best as it could. And but amongst other issues that Jean Tierney had in her life, there was that she had terrible marriage relationships and stuff like that, and she ended up in an asylum for a while. But
A couple
here she
times,
is.
I thought.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought a couple times in
Probably
asylum.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and one of them, I just remembered reading that she tried to run away from it because like they were doing electroshock therapy, and
Yes.
she's like, it's fucking with my memories.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah,
Like,
they
you know,
did lobotomize her. I mean, oh my God, yeah. Like
Oh, she's
this is
so
not a
lucky
time
that
to go to a
didn't
mental
happen.
asylum.
No.
It's not like they have you talk out your problems. It was insane fucking shit they did to people, like shock treatment,
It was the real
hydrotherapy,
horror. It's the real horror story.
Bedlam
Yeah.
would be a good one to watch if you want insight into that. So awful shit. But here she is acting in this role where she has to give birth to a defective baby, and it probably was not real great for her.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
But
I can't imagine.
She's an amazing actress. She did great.
Oh, when they have the priest in reading the last rites over the baby, and
was
she
baptism.
looks up and just those tears are like falling down. I'm like, that is a woman who knows heartbreak, because she's just like gone. I'm like, wow, that's some powerful acting. Like
Yeah.
that is heartbreak right there. Like it was beautiful and powerful, but also
So,
like
yeah.
very sad.
Very sad. So some of the baby's born, and you have this scene where Dr. Turner goes to try to tell Nicholas what's going on with the baby, and Nicholas is not hearing it. And then we have the baptism, and again, Nicholas is like, well, the only reason we're doing this here, Pastor, is because it's to soothe my wife, but it'll be in the church afterwards. And of course, though, as soon as he says it, the baby's dead, and that's
Yeah. And that's when she cries, and it's horrible. And
Then, of course, the next scene, you have Peggy. Well, let's not forget this. So Nicholas doesn't even try to comfort Miranda. He just goes to go to his tower room, and Peggy tries to stop him. He's like, don't leave your wife. Like she needs
you're
you
needed
now.
here. You're needed here.
Nicholas is like, fuck my wife.
Mhm.
That
I'm
was
out.
kind of horrifying, honestly. Like,
Yeah, it shows
like
this
she's
absolute
just crying and
self-centeredness.
then alone and crying over her child, and that was horrible. That was very hard to watch.
Mhm.
Honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
kind of broke my heart a little. Like, oh,
Which
and
I
then
recall is interesting too. It's very heartbreaking. So Dr. True, when he revealed that the baby was probably not going to live to Nicholas, he also said that Miranda looks healthy and fine, and you'll have another chance. Which I bring this up because later on, Nicholas acts like that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he seems to think it's a one and done thing.
Yeah, like she popped out one. It was defective. We're done now. I don't know.
Yeah,
But then again, he did reveal that the issue with Johanna had been that she had given birth to Catherine and then could not have any more children.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think we kind of skipped that over, but that was a lot of his resentment and of his daughter, because she was not a son, and she, ruined the womb.
Whatever happened during the childbirth, it was rough, and she can't have children anymore.
Yeah. So then we have a scene where you have Peggy and Miranda, they're embroidering in the half light, discussing the fact that Nicholas is forever up in his tower room. And, Peggy conjecture could happen with her. And you can just see Miranda like, all right, that's it. I'm just going to go confront what the fuck's going on.
Yeah,
here.
you can say that she's had enough. She's had enough, and she's going to confront the situation regardless of what could happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So she goes.
Good.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Good on her. She goes on up the stairs, and then you have Nicholas looking a little ragged.
Got
That's how putting it.
Yeah.
And this nice argument ensuing where she's like, what is it you're doing here? And then he's just acting like an arrogant jackass, like she can't possibly understand, I'm so different than you. I'm so, basically the poem alone. I'm so above all this. I'm so by myself. I have this. I will not lead this ordinary life, which I think is funny because he is leading an ordinary life for what he is.
Yeah.
Really, the exceptional one is actually Miranda. She is not leading an ordinary life from where she came from. You know, she should be a farmer's wife. She's living it. And it's funny because he's acting like she can't possibly understand that, but that's what she was, you know, like she was not one with where she grew up. She was extraordinary. She was different. She was also the one who didn't fit in, was alone. She absolutely was a person he could have confided in, but he's a dick. Nobody can understand him, you know. And like he's even like backhanded complimenting her and kind of like, oh, you're intelligent enough for your breeding, but you know.
Yeah.
And I love because in the end she just calls him out. She's like, oh, well, he reveals that he's an opium addict. Like that should shock her and make her go like,
I'm a drug addict. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, she's just like, and then he's like, blah, 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 this is why, because and all these like flighty, haughty, you know, reasons. And she's like, yeah, you're running away. I call bullshit. Yeah. All this equals you're running away because you're a pussy.
Yeah. And doesn't she say something too like, well, then stay here and help me?
Yeah. Yeah. Because she's like, let me help you. He's like, no. She's like, well, then help me. But so this is like, I alluded to this earlier. So like I said, Vincent is hot and lovely, but I was a little more drawn towards Glenn Langan because he's a little more, look, I want to be able to climb it like a stripper pole and ride to the ground. And if you're too skinny, I'm a little afraid to break. But the reason why Vincent Price is so skinny is he dropped 30 pounds to look like this opium addict. And Joseph Mankiewicz, like his direction was, you should be gaunt, you should be thin, you need to keep your posture very upright because we want you to look as emaciated and gaunt as possible, which leads to like one of my favorite things. Apparently at one point when like Victor was, you know, because Joseph Mankiewicz was always like, keep that posture very, very severe, very, very severe. You know, we really want to draw out the lines. And so Vincent was going to walk into a room for a scene and Joe Mankiewicz called out to him, remember, Vincent, nice erection. Which of course everybody blew up because dick jokes are just never going to go.
Yeah.
From the dawn of civilization.
So yeah, even in 1944, we had erection jokes.
I mean, a prominent feature in Roman graffiti, what they found in Pompeii was dicks all over the place.
Dicks everywhere, dicks.
Rare. Yeah.
So sorry, a little levity in that situation. So after this confrontation, which nothing seems to come from, unfortunately, other than the fact that you know that Miranda is not going gently into that good night. And also,
she's
I think
fed up.
Yeah. She's like, whatever. You have this next scene.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that it's his response to the whole tragedy is really the very emo, poor me, poor me, poor me. You know, there are other people involved in this situation, and they are probably just as torn.
Lost a child. Yeah.
Which Miranda calls out. He's like, I lost a son. She's like, I lost a son. We lost a son.
Our son died in my arms, you twat. Like,
for real.
Yeah. But yeah, meanwhile, yeah. I mean, basically, you have a narcissist here. I mean, it's all about him.
Yeah, big time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Classic narcissist. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to watch. I mean, it's kind of a nicer version of watching a narcissist.
At least he's handsome to look at.
I've seen worse.
Yeah.
He didn't gaslight her as much as some narcissists do. Like, there's not a whole lot of gaslight. There's a lot of grooming, but there's not a whole lot of gaslighting. Like, he doesn't try to convince her, like, no, things aren't happening that you think are happening. He doesn't do that.
Exactly.
There's a lot of the everything you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
Yeah.
They don't show us a lot of it, though. They imply it. Like she says, like, I feel like everything I'm doing is wrong, but they don't necessarily show you him chastising her constantly, which, except about the maid, but you don't get to see like him being like, you look horrible today. What are you doing? Stand up straight. Nothing like that.
This is the wrong menu. You know.
Yeah.
Well, even the scene where she mentioned, so they were going to have the ball again, you know, and he said something about her dress being ready, and she's like, I don't think it really matters because we've got another refusal. And he's like, fuck those people.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because he could have been like, yeah, because of you, he was like, no, they will come to the party for me or else, because despite you, you are mine. So, I mean, it's not that great, but it's better than him being like blaming her for being a farmer, his daughter,
Right.
But yeah, so next thing we know, we have loyal Peggy with Dr. Turner, basically begging him to help, which is funny because his interpretation is like, he's like, I can't help this dude being a drug addict. There's nothing I can do about that. And Peggy's like, what shit about you helping him? Do you think I'm doing?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you need
He's
to go
not
help
while
Miranda.
I'm here. Yeah, her focus is on her mistress.
Yeah. And he's like, well, what do you want me? He's like, go take her away. And Dr. Turner's like, I am a doctor. I can't just go take her out the house, even if
Right.
does she want to go? And Peggy's like, no, I don't care if she wants to go with you. You need to get
Right.
like,
She's
it's
like,
really
oh,
unreasonable. Like
I don't care about her
poor
free will.
doctor. It's like, I can't abduct the woman. And Peggy's like, no, just go abduct the woman.
She's like, no, you can't. Just do it. Just do it.
It's fine. It'll be fine. Nobody, you won't get arrested for that. It's all right.
Oh.
But then she brings up the fact that he had this oleander sent to her room. He's like, he had this plant sent to her room and she thinks it's the best thing. Oh, actually, Peggy mentions the fact that
The ugly plant.
well,
I
not
think
even
she calls the
that,
plant
like,
ugly.
before that, she talks about how like she never knows, like the way that Miranda has to react to Nicholas is like, one woman being
Mhm.
grateful for anything he does and terrified of what he'll do next. And then she's like, even the way she reacted to bringing in the ugly plant. So it does apply this whole time, this, we mentioned with Johanna, where she just didn't, like, she's walking on eggshells because she doesn't know what the reaction is going to be for the next action she does. You get that's repeated with Miranda. Not that that's surprising. It's
Very
not
clear,
like the
yeah.
guy's going to change for another woman, but people think that they do change. They don't, just so you know. Be aware. But yeah, yes. So she mentions that the oleander is ugly and that, that it seems dark and scary, and there's something dark and scary about Nicholas, but she can't put her, finger on it. But of course, as soon as she mentioned, sorry.
Yeah, that I thought, because, here you have Peggy, she's this maid, her entire career exists on being, unobtrusive to those that she's serving. So she has to be able to be an astute observation of character, even for her own safety from her own employer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because she may have some issue, deformity that causes a limp, but she's an otherwise pretty girl.
Yeah.
You all know the power imbalance that can happen.
Yes.
So
dangerous.
So she is probably much more an astute judge of character and can pick up that stuff a lot easier. And yeah, it's like what is it? Do I even have it written down? Oh no. But yeah, so she mentions the plant, and then you see the doctor like, what?
Pay attention.
Yeah. Click what attention you have it.
Yep. Which, because the doctor has done research and grown since then, so he now understands the property of oleander and the science behind the poisoning if it can be involved in it. So as soon as he hears about the plant, he snaps too because he knows what's coming.
He's like, oh shit, he's figured it out.
Miranda's about to die.
Yeah.
So of course they go running to the rescue, but meanwhile Nicholas has gone into the room to have it out with Miranda again, which is interesting because this is when in this fight, this is where he pretty much states that he thinks she can't have kids anymore. He pretty much said, what if that was our only, the only chance to have a kid? What if you aren't able to conceive again, which is funny because it's like, well, what if you're sterile, you fucker?
Yeah, really. What if the problem is on your end?
Yeah.
And he lays it out for her. He says, what you are is the reflection of what I wanted you to be. He's laying out for her to see his manipulation from the start.
And at the same time implying that she's nothing without him anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. He's like, yeah, I agree totally. It's like, yeah, I've groomed you. I've created you basically. But clearly he didn't, because if he had that much control over her, there would have been no fight left in her, and she still had it. You know what I mean?
He didn't do
She's
as good
still-
a job as he thought.
Yeah. Well, he underestimated her for sure. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
Trixie Duncan. But she's still pretty. He mentions that. Because that was really the big important part about it all.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But meanwhile, the doctor comes storming in along with Peggy and basically reveals that he had killed Johanna by using this plant and that he had manipulated the doctor into being there to try to set him up as like, a fail and, cover the tracks kind of because he knew the doctor was too young and naive to even think about the poisoning of the oleander. And what was he called? A glyphosate, I believe is what it is.
Something, I think so.
And, calls out the science of it that he states about oleander being used as poison is exact. If you Google it, it's exactly what it does, which came up against code. That was another thing that code wanted them to change because they didn't want it being revealed how to poison people with oleander. But Mankiewicz was also like, fuck you.
You got to leave it in.
Left it in anyway. But yeah, so if you don't know how to use Google, you can watch Dragonwyck and learn how to poison people with oleander. Just in case, But they also, I believe, mentioned foxgloves. So there you go.
They do.
Did you
A friend
tell
of
us?
mine used to grow that in her front flower beds.
It's
She's like
legal
a-
to flower.
Well, yeah,
Rabbits and people eat it.
I
That's
was
their
at
own
her
damn
house.
fault.
I was at her house and I looked at them like, oh, those are so pretty. She's like, oh, they're foxgloves. I'm like, Kara. And she just smiles.
It's good to have handy. I'm just saying. But yeah, so then we have like a little fight between the doctor and Nicholas, and the reveal to Miranda, who's now shocked and appalled that he killed Johanna, which she really should have guessed that by now.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
But,
Yeah.
to be fair, it was a dream. She's young. She's a little naive.
I was going to say, and I'm sure in some way she thinks, well, he's treating me like this, but he couldn't have treated her like this. This is a totally different situation. I'm just some farm girl. She was like something else to him. So I'm sure there's some of that too. But
yeah, we're justifying his treatment of her based on that too, as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we've all been in those situations. We're very good at justifying what's happening to us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, yes. So the doctor and Nicholas fight, and it's a lovely scene in my opinion.
It is.
I think he knocks out. Remind me. I think he knocks out Nicholas, and then they, make a run for it. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And then that's afterwards is when kind of he comes to and he hears the ghost.
Yeah, he can hear the ghost. He hears the harpsichord and the singing. For the first time.
And then his crazy delusional ass makes his way to where the festival is usually held, to his ancestral chair, and is reliving the little scene where he's telling off the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe all the farmers and Dr. Turner and Miranda are all there. And
yes. Yeah, they come up and they're basically doing,
because he's fired off his gun at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like threatening them and like, I'm going to kill you all kind of thing. And then
he raises his gun and somebody shoots him and he dies. And then it ends with Miranda in the coach again because she's leaving Dragonwyck, which was funny because this is the thing that was like, I didn't quite catch when I was younger. When I was younger, I'm like, but this is all her shit. Why is she leaving all her shit? Because I wasn't thinking, and I was like 8 or 9. So I didn't realize the inheritance laws. None of that was her shit. She didn't get a damn thing from being.
I was going to say she can't inherit any of that. Nothing. She wouldn't even get any money. No.
So I had to go to another male relative.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said, which is bullshit, because she should have been like the rich widow at that point in time.
But no. Women didn't inherit dick. Even the daughter won't inherit anything. So yes.
I was just saying the daughter wouldn't inherit anything. If he doesn't have another living male relative, then it would stand in perpetuity until basically his daughter married someone that could take over the land.
Yeah. So it would be, if that were the case, it would be in the daughter's best interest not to, because then you can still enjoy all the goodies, which you'll lose once you get married.
Yeah. But she's in the coach, and Dr. Turner, of course, shows up again, reminiscent of the first time she leaves Dragonwyck. And he's like, is this all you taking with you? And she's like, this is all I brought with me, except for the black dress. That's all fun.
Yeah.
And basically they reenact this scene where like Greenwich isn't all so far away. And, she's
Would
like,
next
yeah,
week be
anytime
too
too
soon?
soon. So the implication is eventually she'll be Mrs. Dr. Turner.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you ask me, she should have taken any jewelry she was given.
Maybe she did.
Maybe some
Yeah,
of the silver.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, those. And thus ends the epic Dragonwyck. A couple interesting things, like again, like I said, I have not read the story, but when I was listening to the commentators, they mentioned that Nicholas doesn't die in the book. Apparently they let him get reformed. I'm not really sure how that happens, like with the doctor and all that, but
I can see why they changed it for Hollywood. Oops.
Yeah, and also for code at time, evil must be punished, so you don't get to redeem yourself. You need to die if you do bad things. But the doctor was like activist, like he wasn't just involved with the farmers, like he talked about in the book, apparently, where he was going to go off for like I think the Mexican Revolutionary War as well. Like so he was like in for the cause. No matter the cause. So
good for him.
But yeah, just a phenomenal movie. And like, so as I mentioned, Vincent Price was the third build, but I mean, it's his movie.
It is.
Just takes it over. And it's not like because he was trying to, it's just I guess he read Edgar Allan Poe's, maybe, he just developed this empathy for Poe's work because he read Alone, he understood the character then, and then he just brought it home. And it's amazing. And I also thought it was funny because by that, first we have this clean cut version of Nicholas throughout the beginning of the movie. And then like once we go further and further into his addiction and all that, he ends up being like
scruffy face.
Sharpie with the, with what we really recognize Vincent Price with that mustache and beard, like he basically became the Poe characters he'd be playing later.
Yeah, he did.
And I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. Overall, so go ahead, Betsy.
No, I was going to say it is really funny, like the draw along that he gets like kind of dirtier and as it goes.
It's definitely the outside being a reflection of the inside. This is how we're going to show his descent into madness
and his loss of control. Yeah.
Oh, the first of those movies of his descent into madness.
One might say he descended into madness and never got back out of madness.
I get behind that.
What's funny because Universal was trying to make him into like their next Boris Karloff, actually, was their goal for him. And he left Universal and moved to Fox, and that's what Laura and this movie and all the other ones are, well, not all of them, but many of the other ones were. And it's interesting to me that he left Universal and then ended up becoming the next horror
star. Yeah it is ironic, but it's like overall for this movie I think this is some of his best work, if not the best, because he's playing this lovely menacing character without the camp. There's not really any camp in this film at all. I don't think.
No this is played very straight, and it's beautifully played straight.
Yes.
And from the minute he hits scene, you're like, oh, this is what he can do. I'm kind of sad we didn't see more of this because
I agree. I would have loved to have seen more of him playing like the subtle villain at first. Because he does it so well.
Fun. It's super fun when he goes all camp crazy, but also like him being more of like the debonair, like quiet evil is really fun too. And honestly, I could also have seen him be a romantic lead, although I don't think they would have ever let him do that because he was quite tall. Apparently they had problems with his height. A lot of studio people didn't want to hire him because it was hard to find women who didn't have who
they could get in like the same scene.
How
funny.
Weird, right? But yeah, they had some problems with his height, so I think that's kind of interesting because I'm like, but he's so small.
Which it makes it interesting. Glenn Langan is nearly as tall as he is. I think there's like maybe a half an inch difference between the two. And I think that actually made the movie work in a lot of ways because they were eye to eye. So, if you imagine if you had a shorter protagonist, it might have looked a little goofy. But since they had that, I mean, it works. You've seen it in other things, but the fact that they were like on the same level really just like the conflict just kind of moved so much better.
It
And,
crackled a lot more.
yeah. But the thing is, this is really where he developed his, I don't want to explain, but you know how most villains are usually loud and boisterous and their menace is like,
Yes.
his menace, even in his campier ones, it's still a soft-spoken menace. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
He's the more
he really,
restrained.
yes, and he
House on
really
Haunted
defined
Hill.
that here.
Mhm. I just
Yes.
watched that last night.
Yeah. House on Haunted Hill, always, because he's like, really? To his wife, like, it's amazing. And he's totally villainous, but he's like the quietest villain in there and just skeezing his way through it. It's really good, but he's very skeezy. But it's super fun. Super fun.
And he got that from here. I mean, that's the way he just, I think he watched what he did in this movie and he was like, yes, this is how evil is done, and he was right.
I think he found what worked for him and used to that.
Mm-hmm. And it's true. I mean, like, if you think about, like, if he was not Vincent Price and this really calm spoken menace, this movie would not have worked the right way,
No.
Yeah. At all.
No,
Like,
could you
if he had
imagine
like a
someone
Klaus Bleeker
boisterous
kind of
doing it?
loud character.
Yeah.
Well, even, I mean, if they were going to use like Gregory Peck, I can see Gregory Peck playing this very much the same way. It would have been a very quiet, subdued kind of evil. And that's what they needed for that. And I think that it was smart of them to do Vincent Price, because that's like you said, even in the campiest stuff that he does, he's still a quiet villain. Even when he's like, I worship the devil.
I was just thinking of
Mask of the Red Death. Yeah. Even in that one, he's still like just like smarmy, but he's not like, it is a campy movie. He is not campy in the movie, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is true of him, because he basically, it's his thing that he believed that it didn't matter how goofy the role, you took your art seriously, and that left you free to be like the best artist that you could be. So and
I think that's why
even the Muppet Show, you know what I mean?
And I think that's why his pieces are so enjoyable, is because he's taking his work seriously.
Yes. There are a couple actors that are like that you can tell that they put 110% into every single role that they had. Even if it was a dumb role, they put 110% in that dumb role. They didn't care, they were still having a blast with it and took it to a new level of what it could be. And I think especially a lot of these classic actors that we get to deal with are some of those people. They're like, yeah, I'm playing a mummy and I'm going to play that mummy to the nth degree of playing that mummy.
What popped into my brain just right now was Galaxy Quest and Sigourney Weaver's character. Oh my God, I'm repeating it. I'm repeating everything the computer said, and somebody calls her out on it. And she's like, look, I have one job on this ship. It's stupid, but I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Truly. Like this type of actor, it was a time when you were like, even if they're putting me in a dumb role, I will take that dumb role and I will execute it to the best of my ability, even though it's crazy. I'm gonna do it. And I think it's fun. There's some actors now that can do that, but I think that some of these classic actors really embrace that and just did the thing. So, and I love it. I just love it.
There was so much. Yeah, well, there's so much good acting in this film all around.
From absolutely.
The Doctor, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Doctor was amazing. Even some of the littlewings. Harry Morgan was really good, playing this like obvious farmer who's like, I'm ready to take you on. I am ready to do this because it's not fair. Even that little vignette, like very well acted. So in general, I mean, it's pretty impressive film, really. Like, and I found a whole lot of videos on YouTube that were like Dragonwyck, an untold gem of a film, or like you've never seen it but you should. And I'm like,
a lot of the trailers for it, stuff like that. They did a really good job in the film of showing like all the things that were picking away at Nicholas's worldview. His wife his first wife not being able to have any more children, the farmers revolting, basically, protesting for their rights to buy the land. Miranda, frankly, still, and the child passing away so quickly after birth, and even her still, frankly, maintaining her spirit.
Nuts.
Well, and even
So,
in the conversation that him and the father have, where he's like, I will vote for anyone who will keep my way of life in mind. So he's aware that like the politics are not going his way.
Yeah.
Because he wants to maintain his land, and he's like, yeah, I'll vote for anyone as long as they don't, try to take my land from me, because he knows it's going
interesting
that
considering.
way.
Yeah.
And then it does happen to him. It's a very much a foreshadowing, but he literally says, like, I would vote for anyone who will keep my lands intact. And
So
you're
the
like,
movie
oh,
itself. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I'm just like,
Okay. Yeah. So the movie cost $1.9 million to make, which, I mean, 1944, that's a lot of money, but it made
Definitely.
$3 million. So they got their money
Okay.
back, and it did really well at the box office. Another random interesting thing of trivia. So like I said, the movie was finished in 1944. And if you watch it, you see at the end credits, there's that little advertisement for victory bonds.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
But it wasn't released until I think it was like April or May of 1945. So the war had been over by the time it was in theaters.
Yeah, it was April, May 45.
Yeah.
May.
So, but they never took the little bond thing off of it.
Bond out.
Oh, funny.
That's fun though.
Yeah.
That's neat.
There's a lot of things. When you watch it and you keep in mind that this is like during the height of the war with Germany and Nazism and all this stuff, it really gives a little more subtext to the Van Ryan character and the horribleness of him, and the way he was supposed to basically be aligning with what the Nazis were like, and why that was so fucking horrifying and evil. So there's a lot to think about.
It's definitely one that I still want to watch more, and it's going to go in the regular rotation when I need something of this environment to watch, because you can take away so much from it.
Yes, there's always something more. Also, if you've never looked up the interesting things about the anti-rent wars and the patroonships, like that's not really in the history books.
No, I never. I don't think I remembered it. I don't think I learned about it in any of my history
read
classes.
about it from the first time I watched this movie. Like I had never heard about it before, and I never actually hear it referenced outside of this movies.
Yeah, I much like you, I had to go look it up. I was like, what is this? And
so
look it up, and I'm like,
interesting bit of American history there. Might want to look into. Also, if you can get your hands on the Blu-ray or the DVD, your local library or whatever, I highly recommend it, because there's a little mini documentary called House of Secrets, Dragonwyck, and there's a lot of insight into what was going on there. And plus there's a commentary by basically film historians and writers, that there's two of them. I'll look up their names later and give them to you guys, but and they talk through the whole movie, but it gives you those insights to those deleted scenes and what was going on, and the cute little story about, nice erection.
Gonna giggle now for a while anytime I see Vincent Price on screen thinking about that.
Yeah. And also quotes Price talking about this being the first of his Dead Wives movies and all, and the insight to the Edgar Allan Poe Home Alone. And so all that comes mostly from watching the special features on that DVD. So I highly recommend if you get a chance to do it. And if you don't, it's also thanks to Rebecca, because this was her discovery with her YouTube foo. The whole film is free on YouTube.
Yep, that's how I watched it. So I watched it free on YouTube. It was in pristine condition, so it was lovely to watch, and I had no problems with it at all.
Because I thought I had ordered the DVD, couldn't find it. Just like about 5:30, I was like, I could have sworn I had it, and so I went back and searched my Amazon history. It was part of a collection that I ordered, and so I was visually looking for a standalone Dragonwyck DVD amongst mine. So I'm like, oh, there it is. So yeah, I do have it. I am going to have to go back and listen to the extra material, assuming it is on that collection.
I think It is on a collection. I believe it's a Fox Horror collection.
Yes,
You
that's the
might
one I
have a
have.
different one, but anybody looking for it, you can also, I don't know if it has the extras with it though. You might want to check that part.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Sometimes
what
when they put them in
extras
the
have.
collection, they just put the movie.
They
don't
lose a
put
lot
the
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
if they don't have it, I'll probably reorder it as a standalone.
There is both a DVD and a Blu-ray, but they're both out of print now. So unless you're lucky, they're going to cost you a bit.
Yeah.
But if you're local in Columbus, it is available free from the Columbus Library.
Support your local library.
Absolutely. Libraries are great.
And boy, we talked this a lot because it's a
We did.
fascinating movie.
It was such a good film. Such a good film. We've been trying. We just can't stop talking about it.
I know, it was such a good film. There was so much about it that was fantastic on a bunch of different levels. You know, like man, it's just it's so good.
It's not a traditional horror film, I will say. There are horror elements, certainly, and especially like the fact that they don't ever explain what the noise is, and that the daughter can hear it, and that he can hear it. Is it some kind of a psychosis that they suffer from, or is there really a ghost in this house that is affecting
we don't know.
the people from the? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know, and we'll never find out. And that's lovely.
Yep.
Oh God, I just thought about it. What happens to poor Katerine?
There will probably be sort of a trust where she's sustained with it, and because they probably whatever closest male relative to the Van Ryan, and then they probably will marry her.
She gets older, but dear God, that poor girl's at boarding school and her dad just died.
Yeah, but remember, she doesn't have feelings for her dad.
No,
you know, there aren't the usual paternal daughter.
But still, I mean, there's nothing like, you know. And at least she had Miranda for a while, and Miranda was just kind of like, okay, well, bye.
Yeah.
Not that there'd be anything she could do anyway, you know.
True.
Besides write her letters.
She wouldn't have a word in it. But yeah, all right, we're signing off. I just had that thought. Sorry.
On that note, terrible negligence of children. But yeah, watch Dragonwyck.
Trying to see if I have any last other comments. No, I got that. But yeah, the movie is excellent. People need to watch this film.
I was going to say, this is a definite watch. Sometimes I'm like, I mean, you could watch it if you want to, but this one is go watch it. It's really fun.
The damn film.
Plus, especially since you can get it free on YouTube. You have no excuses not to watch the film. It's out there. It's available for you. It's like an hour and 46 minutes. Just spend the time and watch the movie. It's also not even white, which is why I'm in black and white today.
It's not even a super long movie. You know, it's not like you're sitting there for 3 hours. And take a nice time some evening, maybe hopefully when it's a dark and stormy night. Perfect setting. Pour yourself a cocktail, pour yourself some wine or coffee or tea or whatever you like, and enjoy a very solid movie.
Yeah, and a very solid Vincent Price.
Oh my! Well, one hopes so.
Like 36 in this movie, and he is lovely. Wow,
he is fine in this film.
Just enjoy the beauty of this film. But yeah, enjoy Dragonwyck. Read the poem Alone by Edgar Allan Poe, so you get a little more extra insight.
I'm gonna do an extra. It'll be out tomorrow to lead up to this. So,
hooray!
It'll be out before the podcast is, but it'll be out there on social media.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Jenny.
I'm Rebecca.
And we'll see you next time.
You have been listening to the Girls Ghosts Ghouls podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Ghosts Ghouls podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghosts Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Ghosts Ghouls podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.